your money, your taxes, your truck, and your road to success in the trucking industry. This is Trucking Business and Beyond, the show that puts the money where it belongs, back in your pocket.
Good morning, you beautiful bunch of fuckers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Friday, June 7th. We are here live. It's time for trucking, technology, and efficiency. We'll also make it a Friday free-for-all, so you can talk about anything you want. Phone lines are open. If you're listening on the app, hit that call now button and jump in here and join us. If you're watching on the live stream, you can pick up the phone and dial 855-950-3835. I'll also try to monitor the chat this morning. If you want to drop a question in there, we might tackle those as well. We're just going to get right to it this morning. I see Joel is here already, so I'm going to bring Joel in. Joel, did you enjoy your week off last week?
Yeah, I kind of did, actually. It wasn't bad.
Good. Somebody else is jumping in here. We'll see who it is. Looks like Alex on his way in. So I've got absolutely nothing today, so I'm counting on you guys to carry the show.
Well, good. I've got a lot of stuff since I wasn't around last week.
Good. Let's get to it then.
And well, I guess the first thing is, and maybe we'll call this trucking technology and hiring event.
Okay.
We're contemplating on possibly hiring a driver.
Okay.
I've kept it all in the family up till this point, and my purple truck was built early, Purple Haze 2. And okay. I'm going to be getting that much earlier than what I expected. And I put a little post out in social media to see how many people were actually following along with Blueberry here. And it seems to be very popular.
Good.
And I wasn't really expecting that, being a 6x4 and all, just bone stock. And we're thinking we may want to keep this thing on the road. And to do that, I need to come up with a driver that kind of fits the criteria, very safety oriented, efficiency oriented. I'm looking for a very special person to do this. And I know that's very tough to find nowadays, but
yeah,
I thought maybe I'd give it a shot.
I have a feeling it's not going to be as hard as you think. The following you've created, the excitement, that this isn't just a typical driving job. I mean, of course, you got to still do all the same things any driver does. But, this, I don't think you're going to have a hard time. I think you're going to find somebody good.
Hopefully. I mean, I would like to keep Blueberry on the road. I think it's a great benchmark, being that it's all stock and will continue to kind of remain in the stock configuration. We may do some things to the suspension, and it has the auxiliary air conditioning that we may do some things to, but for the most part, it's going to be our benchmark truck. It's a 6x4 I-torque, and it's going to allow us to benchmark our 6x2s against it. So
yeah.
Hopefully you're right. Alec was kind of the same mindset that he's like, no, we'll be able to find somebody. And I'm like, we'll see. So
I'm actually going to make a prediction that you're going to have more than one you're interested in, and it's going to be a tough choice. That's what I'm going to predict.
Gotcha. Well, yeah. Let's hope.
Yeah.
So I'm still in the process of working all the details out. Trying to decide, does this make sense to keep this truck on the road? And I think it probably does. But if anybody's interested, you can shoot Alec an email at alec@alphadrivers-tc.com and maybe send a resume over if anybody has an interest in a company position. And then Alec can get back with our pay package and benefits and all that type of stuff, if we find somebody interesting.
You're going to pay the driver?
That might help, right?
No.
That might help.
Oh, there's Alec. Good morning, Alec.
Not if Alec has anything to do with it, right?
Good morning, guys.
You know,
That's exactly right.
I'll also put out there real quick, if they didn't catch that email address, there's 100 ways to get a hold of me, and I'll pass it along. So if you're interested, reach out to me or them, and we'll make it happen.
Perfect. Let's see what else we got going on.
Real
we
quick,
have.
you mentioned Purple Haze 2. Tell me the single thing you're most excited or interested in about Purple Haze 2.
So what they've been able to do is significantly speed up how fast the eye shift will shift. And they've been doing some drag racing with today's current eye shift and the next generation eye shift, which will be in Purple Haze 2. And they've done a drag race with a 308, a 247, and the 2.16, which Purple Haze is. Now, traditionally, we'd always think that either the 308 or the 247 is going to blow the doors off in a drag race off a 216. It is now just the opposite. Because the engine's making so much power and torque at low RPM, and the gearing holds us in that power and torque band, the average horsepower and torque is higher. We actually get faster acceleration with this. And that's the first time that's happened with a downsped truck. We've never been able to do that in the past.
Interesting.
Now we can actually out accelerate traditional trucks in a flat out drag race.
Is this, if you were to look at what's happening on this and when they're programming it to shift, does it look like progressive shifting?
It's absolutely progressive shifting on steroids.
That's what I thought.
Now, in the past, when we progressive shifted, we got the benefits of the lower piston speed, but it always felt a little laggy because we just weren't making a lot of horsepower down low.
Right.
Today, with a 500 1950 at 900, we've got 200-300, sometimes 400 more pound-feet of torque than legacy engines, at that very low RPM. So we're making a lot more torque and horsepower, and the new transmission really leverages that benefit. And this is going to further complicate the issue that you have when we talk about boost, because we're building lots and lots of boost, but at very low piston speed. And I just want to drive home the point. High boost at low piston speed is efficiency. It just is. That's what efficiency is. So I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback on that, but I have to address it. Just look at,
I have to address it every Tuesday.
Just look at Travis Flowers' numbers. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that kind of proves it out in the real world. What we're saying is correct. Yes, you will have some issues Tuesday because you'll get the older school folks calling in that are going to be a little confused by this. And I get it. It's not an easy thing to wrap your head around, and it took us forever to figure out how to do this. And so I completely understand when we'll have a lot of skeptical people, and we'll have people that won't understand. But just be aware that I think this thing is just going to be just a work of art, really, when it comes to the powertrain. We spent a lot of time and a lot of brain power on this, and I think we've got a winner here.
So the reason I asked that question about progressive shifting is I'm going to go back. This was probably late 90s, maybe, and it was the first time, I was just researching everything I could find, and I was messing with the parameters, and I asked about the progressive shifting, and I had them turn it on. It was a Detroit 60 series, and what a shock it was the first time I drove the truck. That was a pretty extreme setting. If you weren't used to that, and your initial reaction is, oh, I'm going to get run over every time I try to pull out into traffic. Like, this thing just won't even get out of its own way. But then I started playing with it and realized if you shifted that truck correctly, we never really tested it, but I said over and over and over, I was just guessing. I said, I'm pretty sure if you progressive shift properly, it should be the fastest way to accelerate. And yet it feels the opposite.
Depending upon weight.
Right.
Weight and terrain.
Right.
So,
yeah. When you get really heavy and you're uphill, forget it. You're not going to progressive shift.
Right. And it's actually detrimental at that point. You're 100% right. Because we're talking about horsepower. Horsepower ultimately is how fast we're doing work, right? Mm-hmm. And when we have lower RPM at any given torque, our horsepower is lower. So when we have light loads or moderately heavy loads, they don't require near as much horsepower as what people think. This is why progressive shifting works, and it works especially good with light and moderate loads. Guys get into a heavy load on a hill, and they're like, oh, this is the stupidest thing ever. Well, it doesn't really apply to that specific situation. And this is part of the magic of iShift, because it knows how much you weigh and when you're going up the hill, and it knows to say, hey, I don't need to progressive shift right now.
Right. Here's what I found, and one of the drawbacks they've solved. In order to progressive shift properly, you had to shift fast. You had to be really good at it. If you tried to do it with a manual transmission, I spent a day in a parking lot practicing over and over and over. And here's what I found every time I put somebody in a truck with progressive shift turned on. Here's exactly why you accelerate so slow until you figure out how to drive this. We're used to running every gear out. In the early, I mean, it's easy to hit, max RPM in those early gears really fast. That's why you have to do this so fast. But here's the reaction. You hit that RPM limit that it put on you, and you still feel like you need more. So by the time you feel that, you should have already shifted. You're already too late. And now by the time, instead of shifting, they'd already be too late. You know what everybody does? I could watch it. They try to push harder on the pedal. The pedals, there's nothing left, and you just lost a full second by just thinking, I need to push harder on the pedal. And by that time, you've lost all your momentum. And they do that every gear, and they're like, this thing won't even get out of its own way. Well, it will if you learn how to shift it right.
Correct. It's all about leveraging gearing optimization rather than brute force in the engine. And that finesse and that speed is required in order to make progressive shifting work. And then it's also required that the driver understands when is it applicable and when is it not applicable. And then the mechanics of the transmission need to be such that it knows when to disengage that progressive shift logic and when to run a more traditional shift logic, which we've got all figured out on the next iteration of the iShift. So I think that's going to be something very special. They've got the shift speed so fast on a single clutch transmission with this next iShift that it rivals a dual clutch on how fast it picks the gear up. Not quite as fast, but probably 85% of the way there, and it's way less expensive, and it's not near as heavy.
Nice.
So, I'd always wanted to bring a dual clutch over here, and I'm thinking, man, if I just had a dual clutch, I think we can get done what we need to do on highway with just the standard single clutch setup that, saves a lot of expense and a lot of weight. So this is going to be very interesting. The next engine is going to be a 500 1950. And I will tell you that that's very conservatively rated. They're actually probably a little stronger than that. And that's at 900 RPM, where we're going to have 1,950 pound-feet on tap.
Wow.
So we're going to be right in that area where, the 15 and the 16 liters are kind of king of the hill.
Yeah.
And we're going to be in that area at about 200 RPM less.
Wow.
So a lot of the technology that you saw on the new D17, the 780 horsepower Godzilla that they have over in Europe, a lot of that technology has been applied into the D13 to accomplish what's accomplish an engine that's more usable for North American duty cycles.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think this next truck is really, really going to be something special, and I'm hoping people follow along just like they have with the other two, and I think it'll be eye opening.
You know what would be really interesting if this would shine even more in a regional local operation with all the shifting.
It's going to excel at just about anything you throw at it.
You're
exactly
right. It sounds
right.
like that, but
you will be able to buzz around a local or regional operation with a 500 horsepower engine and not get killed on fuel efficiency.
Yeah.
Just because of how fast and how low it's going to be able to pop the gears and still remain extremely efficient. It's going to be pretty cool. The other thing that I thought would blow your mind, I was talking with a powertrain guy, and he told me, now listen to this, 5 to 8% of the fuel burned by a modern truck is due to circulating the oil in the oil system.
What?
Yes.
What?
Yeah, it's pumping losses in the lubrication system.
5
pumping
to
that oil
8%?
takes 5 to 8% of depending on. So they said that's why there's all the focus on the new thinner oils.
Wow.
Because there's a lot to be gained there. And when you take a 15W40, especially an older style 1540 that has the higher Centistoke rating versus today's new, what's the newest one they're coming out with, like
20.
that CP12 or whatever classification, it's going to be down around a 0W30 or a 5W30. There's a significant opportunity for fuel savings in these new oils for sure.
We've always, you and I and everybody that really focuses on fuel mileage, it's one of the things we've looked at. We tried to go to lighter weight oils everywhere you can. We know that there's drag losses there. I would have never guessed anywhere near 5 to 8%. No way. That's huge.
I was absolutely shocked too. Yeah, that's a big deal.
Wow.
So one of the other things that's out there that is interesting. So after I had that discussion, I was over at my brother's place, and he just happened to have 400 gallons of some new BASF motor oil over there. I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I think it was a 0W20. I believe.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild.
So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Yeah. We also have a bunch of lithium-ion batteries that are going in my brother's fleet and that we're going to be testing at Alpha Drivers as well. He just put in a Battleborn EAPU that goes between the frame rails. I think it was a 540 amp hour deal. It's lithium-ion. It's all stainless steel. I mean, they just done a beautiful job on that battery box and system through Battleborn. The gentleman that I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago that says he's got 1 for 4. I'm getting 4 of those batteries. They're going in an auxiliary battery box on Purple Haze. That should have around 650 amp hours of reserve capacity. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to do a 34 and never even have to think about starting a truck, but we'll see how that goes. And just a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline.
There is a lot of cool stuff. Somebody just sent me a conversation about you, Joel, or actually it is one of your conversations.
Okay.
Oh boy. You got to love this stuff.
It's got to be about cheap freight.
No, this one was about speed.
Slow trucks?
Yeah, slow trucks.
Yeah, slow trucks. Yeah.
Boy, what a genius this guy is, huh? We're going to drive really, really fast because it's safer. I have had this argument so many times. If nothing else, can't you just take a couple minutes and go look at what causes most heavy truck crashes? It's pretty simple.
Well, and not only that, and Alec, you're the math genius here. So let's figure the kinetic energy on a truck going 55 with 80,000 pounds versus 75 with 80,000 pounds. And imagine that contact in a minivan with your wife and kids in it. And then you tell me which truck is safer.
And you brought up
Right?
another good point. The kinetic energy is huge. Reaction time is even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Not only
and
will
braking distance is further.
everything about this, it is so illogical to think you can be safer going faster. That is just so wrong. I don't know how you can think that. Reaction time is a huge problem. Braking distance. You are far more likely to have the number one, when you look at all the studies, the number one factor in heavy truck crashes is excessive speed. Rear end collisions.
Absolutely.
Every rear end collision could have been avoided if you were just going a little slower.
Yes. And with that being said, I am not advocating for a government mandated speed on trucks.
No.
I think you should be able to drive whatever speed you want to.
Absolutely.
But it's kind of disappointing when, I don't want to say a majority of the people in the industry, but when we have so many people in the industry that drive trucks that try to make that argument that faster is safer. And it is absolutely not true. There's no way that you can make that argument when you look at the physics of what's going on. It just can't happen.
Yeah, and I love this.
I'll even add to that.
Go ahead, Alex.
So, one of the things that Joel keeps, preaching, and he's right. It's not just the accidents themselves in terms of the number of accidents, but speed impacts the severity of the accident.
Absolutely.
Overall. So, and the folks that say, well, I don't want these anti-lock braking systems and blah, 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 and the requirement for disc brakes in the front and stopping distance. Well, the reason why we have all of that is because of the speed and the severity of the accident. So the folks that are pontificating that speed, it's safer at speed, if that was true, then all the evidence would not be requiring us to have all of these safety devices. So it's kind of a case where we are our own worst enemy in this industry.
No doubt. But how do you respond to a Neanderthal that makes this statement? This one I can't even believe he wrote this. Seriously. For the better part of my career, triple digits was the produce game. No more wear and tear other than U-joints. What? First off, come on. There's no triple-digit trucks. Nobody's running 100-plus miles an hour. Give me a break. He's acting like it was the norm for most of his career. Come on.
Jesus Christ.
And then if you were actually running 100-plus miles an hour with 80,000 pounds, it's the produce game, the amount of wear and tear on every part of that truck would be so over the top. But it's only the U-joints you have to worry about. Where the hell did he come up with that? Nothing else gets more wear and tear, just the U-joints.
Am I on?
No, Henry.
You're
not.
I ran 100 mile an hour on bias ply tube type tires with split rims, and I never had a problem. They held up just fine, right? I mean, come on. This is the most ridiculous bullshit that ever was. These guys lie to themselves, and then they start to believe it, and then they write it out on social media. I don't get it. I just
that to me almost has to be satire. You can't be serious about that.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's just beyond crazy.
It is.
And the thing of it is, so if you took a guy that has 40 or 50 years in the business and he wanted to say, oh, I ran 100 mile an hour back when I started. Okay, how many cars were on the road, especially out west? If your truck could do it, you could probably get away with that if you were foolish enough to do it.
You probably could. Out west. Right. But
yes.
I also
to say that there's no more wear and tear on the truck.
That's insanity.
Has this guy even really drove truck before?
I wonder.
It just sounds like somebody's making up bullshit and posting it.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
It's
Yeah.
I think we've already spent too much time on that. It's not worth it.
It's Friday. Sometimes I
well,
got to cut loose.
You know what?
You
know why it's worth it to point out just the insanity that goes on in this industry at the owner operator and small fleet level.
Yeah.
The lack of knowledge and education is absolutely astounding.
It is.
And these guys are the guys that get up and they protest and they get in these politicians' ears and they fill their heads all full of bullshit. And then some of them will naturally bite on this stuff. And then they're going out and they're pushing an agenda that makes absolutely no sense based on, just nonsense. And
total nonsense.
That's why I think it's kind of important to discuss this stuff every now and again.
But here's the thing: if Billy Bob did go talk to Congress people or some other politician and open their mouth and spouted anything of this sort of caliber, it's not going to go well for said trucking industry.
Oh no,
people
that's
like
the
this
problem.
as the so-called mouthpiece.
Right.
Right. That's the point we're making. Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and
for sure.
Along with that, just sometime this week, I saw a post from one of these goofy groups that they keep starting. They start associations, and then that one doesn't work, and they dissolve it and come up with a new goofy name and start another one. But it's all the same bullshit over and over and over. You just can't talk any sense at all to these guys. You can't get them to answer a simple question. You can't have a reasonable conversation with them. They just get emotional and start screaming. And it's always worse in these cycles. We've been through these cycles. At the bottom, it gets just plain stupid. And that's where we are now. We're just at the point where what I'm watching from some of these people is just total ignorance.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
I'm with you. It's embarrassing for the industry a lot of times, we really need to work on the education part. I mean, it's so important to everybody's success, and not just the individual success, but the success of the industry.
All of us.
And
that's right.
and I understand as we get educated, we're still going to have disagreements, but hopefully we can deal with those disagreements in a little bit better way. As we educate ourselves and become more knowledgeable on this. But, when we make statements that there's no more wear and tear on the truck at 100 mile an hour than 50, you just have rocks for brains. You just simply do. There's just no other way around that. If you've been in the industry for more than 5 days, you understand that the faster you go, the higher your maintenance costs are.
And
there's no way around that.
And it is dramatic if you start talking about anything like speeds they're talking about. I mean, it's off the charts. It gets so bad. If you were truly trying to push the kind of speeds they're talking, one of the things they said this week, and that's why I brought this up, is that, well, I don't know why you guys are always so concerned about what we're doing or what we're saying. And I wish I didn't have to be concerned about it. I wish I could just ignore them. I guess I could if I wanted to, but what was just said is the reason I don't ignore them. If I ignore them, they become the only thing other groups see in the industry. And everybody then believes that is the industry. So I can't ignore them.
They drive the narrative, and that's never a good thing when you have people with a thought process like we just discussed driving the narrative. That's a bad place to be for the entire industry. Whether you agree with 55 or 75, when you have a guy that's talking about a triple-digit truck and that it was wonderful and great, that's just bad for the industry. The optics on it are horrible. I mean, that's suicide for the industry. Might as well put a gun to our head and just pull the trigger.
It is. So I push back on them every time I see this kind of stuff. And I wish I didn't have to waste that time. I wish we didn't have to talk about it. But I think it's better to talk about it and expose it and oppose it so that people understand that isn't the way the whole industry thinks. I'll go one step further, Joel, on the, we're still learning, and we absolutely are. We will be wrong about stuff. We already have been wrong about things. And I always try to make sure we keep an open mind that we can go back and say, look, here's why we thought that, and it made sense, but now we have new information, and here's what we now know. We were wrong on that, but we got it right. On the health side, I have to really do that a lot, and I just have to make sure because there's so much we don't know over there. But this is no different. You and I have talked about things we used to believe, and now we know, well, that's not completely true the way we thought it was.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And the industry is constantly evolving, so things change. And a great example of this is early on, we got on the wide base tires. I ran them for 10 years. I said, these things suck. I don't like them. We went back to duals. Everything got better. Michelin makes huge improvements. They bring me these wide base tires. And now here I am again. So things do change. But as long as you can explain in a logical, methodical manner why they changed, there's nothing wrong with that. It's an evolving industry. Things are going to change, and we have to keep up with those changes, not ignore them and put our heads in the sand. Otherwise we would be on to bias-ply tires with the split rims running two-stroke Detroit still. That's just the way things would be going.
That's right.
And thank God they're not.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to see. We haven't really talked to Henry yet this morning. Henry, I muted you because it sounded like you were in a blacksmith shop a little bit ago.
Well, I got a new different headset on now, so that should be better.
Sounds much better.
So I had listened to a post that Joel had done, and it went on to all this with the speed and all that. And having just got back from a 2,800-mile motorcycle trip, the trucks are going plenty fast, by the way. Somewhere along the line, we forget the sign says that's the limit.
Yeah, exactly. Some people
that's
treat
the
that
end
like
of the world,
it's the
not
minimum.
the beginning. And you hear the comments so much from drivers that will say, can't you at least do the speed limit?
No.
Wait a minute.
No, I'm not going to do the speed limit.
You know what I'm saying? It's the limit is the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are a lot of drivers out there that, depending on where you are in the country, they don't want you to go the speed limit. They want you to break it.
Well, yeah. And that triple-digit guy, I would say his average speed is probably lower than Travis Lauer's, because that truck would be in the shop so much, if for no other reason, replacing tires.
Well,
that his average speed would be.
Oh, shit. You gotta love it, Henry. You just gotta love it.
Can we even?
It's true though.
Can we even?
And also, why we're talking about these Neanderthal comments over the last week, I just can't believe how many people. Well, I'm finishing servicing my truck on my restart. Wait a minute. If you were servicing your truck, you're not on your restart.
Details. Sheesh. Hey, here's a mental exercise for all of us. If we had to guess, let me try this. Somebody describe the truck this guy probably drives.
Well, the 100-mile-an-hour guy,
right.
He drives a 1972 needle nose Peterbilt with a 3408 Cat.
There you go.
With a 4-stick transmission in it.
And
there's no way.
And tall 24.5s.
No, that can't be at all, Joel, because of one problem.
It doesn't
the
make
needle nose is way. Nope. I think you're wrong, Joel.
Okay.
The needle nose has way too narrow of a front, and it's way too aerodynamic.
Okay, we'll get something more brick shape. Okay, how about a W9? There you go.
Extended.
It's got to have a wide grill on it. Yeah.
Right. So now,
okay.
We can all imagine the truck. It's got an 18 speed. It's got tall 24.5s. I mean, we know what this truck is all about. Let's assume that he could actually get this truck to 100 miles an hour with 80,000 pounds on it. Because that's a feat in and of itself. Come on. That is not easy to do. But let's say we got there. Could we even try to calculate the fuel mileage? What do we think you would be getting? Come on.
It's about six gallons a mile.
That's what I'm thinking. The number would be so ridiculous. And talk about wasting time. Do you know how many times you'd have to stop to fuel?
Well, wait a second, y'all. You're proving this point. Because if you have to worry about fuel mileage, you're hauling cheap freight, right?
I'm not worried. At this point, I'm not worried about fuel mileage. I'm worried about time.
But
my God, you're going to be fueling
the
twice a
reality
day.
is, his fuel mileage is probably closer to that of a top fuel dragster than it is of minor Joel's.
Exactly. You're going to be fueling twice a day. You can't make any time like that.
If you put 450-gallon fuel tanks on it.
But
how many 450-gallon tanks?
Yeah, that's right.
Four of them. And if you do your fueling on your break.
Yeah. No, here's what I got it.
Yeah.
This is the only trailer and freight we're going to pull is a tanker with diesel fuel, and we're just going to pipe right into it.
Like a locomotive tender.
Right.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go. So think about this.
But then you can't haul the produce. So
well, that's
not true. Even making revenue now.
Well, wait a minute. Can I put another trailer back
old
there?
School truck. Doubles. Right.
Right.
There you go.
Well, I was reading the comments on that one post of yours, Joel, because I said, my gosh, he stirred up the world with this. Why is there 7 million freaking? And so I start reading through them, and I'm like, really? I mean, there was some good ones too, mind you, but some of them were like, what rock did you just crawl out from under?
So you see on those posts now where they have AI summarize the comments.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Joel or did we lose me? I think we lost me.
Here?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm back.
I hear you both.
Yeah, I wasn't hearing anything at all. I was in radio silence for a minute there. I'm back. Go ahead.
Uh-oh. That's not good.
No.
So anyway, just talking about some of the trucks from the past that everybody likes to kind of relive the glory days. If you remember the 3408 Cats, the 12V71s, the 19-liter Cummins, the KTA, and all those.
Yeah.
Those engines were huge. They were heavy. And by today's standards, this is what's really goofy. My D11 made as much horsepower as a 3408 Cat, as much horsepower and torque at lower RPM.
No doubt. Yeah.
But, people are they see that it's a V8 and that it's got big displacement, and they automatically think that truck will go 100 and something mile an hour. It's just nonsense.
But Joel, you're missing the whole point. You're just missing it all. Because I've been around this long enough. Yes, because you could work on those engines.
Okay. Hey, look, that is the one thing I could completely
on your reset.
On your reset.
We didn't have a reset back then. That's why we got electronic logs.
We barely had log books back then, Alec. Come on. Come on. There's no reset crap.
That's true.
Right.
And it didn't. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
right. But I look, if I could agree with them on anything, I could agree with them on that. Sure, give me a big, long nose classic and pre-emission mechanical engine. Yeah, they're really easy to work on, no doubt. There's one thing we could agree on.
Mm-hmm.
But let's think
count
about
on one thing.
Let's think about something else.
You will be working on it.
That's what I was just going to say. I remember those days. You were always working on your truck. You don't have to do that
Henry,
anymore.
If you had to do rod and main bearings in a DD15, would you be upset?
Well, it depends. Is this at like $1.5 million?
I was going to say 2.5.
Even if it wasn't,
I know.
even if it was at $1.5 million, you most likely are not going to have to do them. We were doing those every 200,000 miles at one point.
200,000, right?
And doing an M frame at 450 to 500.
Let's think about this.
Yes.
Let's think about this. We used to do rod and main bearings more often than you have to change your oil today.
Yes.
We can run 200,000 miles with a good bypass filter.
That's 100% accurate.
We do it all the time. So you are changing rod and main bearings more often than we have to change oil now. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I saw like a 1908 Mac or something like that, and it had brass tags on the side of it that required the oil to be changed every 500 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I had a caller. I had a caller just recently, company driver, and I forget what the whole issue was, but along the way, we found out that it was a small fleet changing their oil at 10,000 miles.
Oh, you got to
still hear it.
You have got to be kidding me. That oil isn't even warm yet.
Jesus, Pete. But it's cheap.
Know.
Oil's cheaper than an overhaul.
How many times have I heard that?
Not if you change enough of it.
Oil's cheap and engines are expensive. Yeah, well, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
If you change it often enough, you can exceed the cost of the overhaul.
All right, we're going to get to some phone calls because they're piling up. I have more homework for you guys,
and it's still going to need the overhaul.
I have
Probably.
I have another good book recommendation for you guys. Nothing to do with trucking, but it. I just read this book this week. I read it. This was a book I read from start to finish in one shot, and it's not a short book. I spent an entire day. I could not put this book down. Now I'm going to tell you this: there's nothing happy or positive about the book. The ending sucks, bad. But it was.
You're ruining the whole book, Kevin. Come on.
Well, if you don't want to, if you don't want to actually read the book, all you have to do is go back and listen to yesterday's show, because I tell everybody everything that happens. Is total spoiler alert. But it's a really, really interesting book, really well written, and it's written like a novel. But it's more historic or future, I guess, of what could and the title of the book is Nuclear War, and the woman who wrote it is
pleasant.
Yeah, I know, an investigative journalist, and she goes through some of the scenarios that we've been modeling for decades. You know, the government models all this. What would happen if X country launches a nuclear weapon? And they go through the whole scenario. And we've been doing this over and over for decades. Well, she takes you inside to some of those scenarios. And she has all the original data, and she's got notes from the meetings. And here's the premise of the book, that if any country launches even a single nuke, the odds are it's over. And it happens in 72 minutes. And she outlines exactly what is happening in those 72 minutes, and it is crazy. The president of the U.S., if he's informed well, here's the other thing I thought was crazy. Anywhere in the world, if somebody launches an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, we know about it in less than a second. Isn't that crazy? We know that they launched it in less than a second, and then within minutes we know where it's headed, and in just a couple more minutes we have almost an exact target that we can predict it's heading for. But when we find the president, we should probably look at the ice cream store first. When we find him, he has 6 minutes to decide what to do.
So I got a question for you, Kevin.
All right.
When was this book written?
Just recently. Like, I think it came out in March.
Okay. So here's kind of my take on this. When you look at how inept the Russians have been in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if they could even get one off the ground anymore.
Well, in the,
I mean, I seriously doubt it. I mean, they have just been completely inept, and it's
almost
been
worse.
horrible for the Russians over there. And well, it does make it worse, except when we look at, and this just happened recently, we have our HIMARS systems over there that are from the late 80s, early 90s, is my understanding. So it's older technology. And they just blew the shit out of a bunch of their latest S-400 air defense systems. So I'm just wondering,
well,
could they even get it out of their airspace before we shoot the damn thing down?
Well, here's something else.
I don't know.
We are very misinformed about a lot of this stuff. Like, I was under the impression we have all kinds of systems to just shoot these things down. We know it got launched within 1 second, but it turns out that our ability to shoot down an intercontinental ballistic missile coming in is almost zero. These things are our systems.
You believe that?
Well, I believe an investigative journalist that comes out with information like this more than I believe what the government's been telling me, because I know how many times they lie to us about other stuff. But she gives all the statistics, but listen to this.
I don't know if the government would tell us, would they?
No, that's the point. They lie to us. They won't tell us the truth. So when somebody does this kind of work, I do tend to believe them. But listen to this. One statistic. Let's say that our missiles are accurate. They're not, by the way. And they said, look, here's the thing. It's like trying to shoot a bullet out of the air with a bullet. And imagine how difficult that would be. And these things are traveling as fast as bullets. I mean, it's insane. Our accuracy on this, like 30%. That's our chances of actually shooting it down, are only about 30%. But it gets worse. There are somewhere around 3,000 or 4,000 nuclear weapons around the world now. At the peak, there was 7,000. We've cut it way back. But there are thousands that other countries have. Do you know how many of these missiles we have that could shoot down an ICBM? We only have 44 of them. So even if they were all 100% accurate, they're not going to do us much good. And going back to
I'm gonna listen to this with an open mind for sure. I don't know if that I'm buying some of it.
Okay,
maybe you're right. I don't know, but
good conversation.
I mean, we just watched the Patriot missile system shoot down all kinds of the Kinzhal hypersonic missiles that are moving at the exact same speed as intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they take them down regularly. I just have my doubts that I don't know. I'll listen to it though; it'll be interesting.
But here's one scenario.
Something we can do about the noise?
Yeah, I can mute Henry. It's almost always Henry. Watch this. There we go. Yeah. It's nice and quiet.
Well, he's been a blacksmith.
Hey, something. He's always beating on things or kicking cans around his garage. I don't know what he's doing half the time. We'll bring him back here in a second.
I think he's doing an in-frame.
He's rolling in some rod and main bearings. He's rolling in rod and main bearings, and then after that, he's got to do his 10,000-mile oil change. So he's going to be a while. So here's
that is funny stuff.
Here's one of the scenarios that makes me worry about Russia being inept. I'd almost rather that they weren't, because in one of the scenarios, I'm going to give away the whole book, but it's still interesting. North Korea launches the nuke at us. That's what starts this particular scenario. Okay. And we have to respond. And this is the philosophy that scared the hell out of me, because I had never thought about this, but this is a thing. All of our missiles are ready to go. I mean, they're ready to launch. They call them Minutemen because they can be launched in 60 seconds. They're hot. They're ready to go. So they're just waiting to push the button. But once we know there are incoming missiles, the thought is most of our missiles are stationary. Russia can move their missiles around anywhere in the country they want. So can North Korea. We don't do that because of safety. We don't want to be driving down the interstate with nuclear weapons. But other countries do that. They have mobile systems. We never know where they are. Everybody knows where all of our missiles are. They're in silos, and you can go online and find them all. So the thought is, once they're launched, somebody else launches, we have a lot of pressure to launch ours because they're the first targets. Every other country is aiming for our missiles first to stop them from being launched. That's why the president has 6 minutes to decide and get them launched, or we lose them. That is their thought process. We can't wait because all of our missiles are the first targets. That's scary.
So are you familiar with the Silent Service?
No.
That's our submarine fleet.
Okay.
One of
They
our
do talk a lot about
submarines.
They do talk a
will
lot about
totally
those, yes.
annihilate all of Russia.
That's
one.
That's the scary
No,
part. Right.
Well, it is scary, but who the hell's going to find one of those subs? The Chinese aren't going to do it. The Russians aren't going to do it. So we are mobile, but just in a different way. They drive around on land. We put them under the ocean.
But Russia's got just as many sub-based nukes as we do. Would they match us nuke for nuke across the board? Silos, submarines, but then they also have some that are mobile on land. But it's not about whether we could win. That's the whole point of this. The whole point of the book
I agree.
Is once
there's no winner here.
Missile flies, it's 72 minutes and everybody around the world has launched all of their weapons. That's the scenario that plays out. Part of the problem is we respond to North Korea by sending enough nukes over to North Korea to kind of take them off the map. But guess where those nukes have to cross to get to North Korea? They have to cross Russia.
Japan.
Russia. So,
you're talking about ours. Okay. Yeah, I gotcha.
North Korea launches one at us. We respond with a whole bunch of them at North Korea to just take them out. Russia sees them coming, and they think it's heading for them, and they launch theirs, and then we have to retaliate. We launch ours, and 72 minutes. She highlights all this stuff. It's insane what goes on.
I'm going to listen to this book. This doesn't work in my mind, but I'm going to read it or listen to it with an open mind. North Korea, to me, launches a nuclear strike. We just put a boat over there and we wipe the country out without having to go in anybody else's airspace. I don't know. It's a scenario. I get it, but it sounds like it's a creative scenario to me personally. But I will listen to it with an open mind.
And the reason I bring this up on this show, honestly, really, because one, you guys are just interesting to talk to, but Joel, especially you play a really good devil's advocate on a lot of topics. You really do, and I like that.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So I'm not the only one that has to put up with this.
Oh man,
you make me think about topics in ways that sometimes maybe I didn't think about it. You know, I read something or hear something, I have a pretty immediate reaction, I have pretty strong opinions, and I like it when somebody pushes back and makes me think about it a different way.
That's always a good thing, as long as we both keep an open mind.
Exactly.
The second somebody disagrees and you say, "Oh, you're an idiot, you don't know shit," then
once the name
all the
calling
benefit
starts,
or value to that goes away.
It's over. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, well, and that's why I enjoy this, because the four of us can have these kind of conversations, and nobody even gets the least bit upset. In fact, it's the opposite. I'm happy that you made me think of something another way, and now I know more about this topic than I used to. So I like that. So that's why I bring it up. But it is a really, if nothing else,
definitely will be interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just
entertaining for sure.
If nothing else, it was one of the most entertaining books. I mean, I could not put this thing down. Like I said, I learned so much. And half of the book, and I'm not exaggerating, when I read on a Kindle, it's kind of different. When you read on a Kindle, you don't necessarily know how big the book is. or how much more you have. I mean, you
Right.
see a page at a time is all you see. But they have settings on it. And while I'm reading, I can see the percentage of the book that I've gone through. You can see how many minutes are left in the chapter based on my reading speed. So it's got a bunch of stats there. But I'm reading this book, and I'm really into it. I mean, I'm really enjoying this book. And when I'm really enjoying a book, I don't want it to end. I want the book to keep going. I'm enjoying this. So I keep watching this
Right.
this percentage. And I'm like, man, I'm really deep into this book, and I'm only at 35%. This is going to be great. What's going to be? I'm trying to figure out what the story's going to be. Because at this point, we got about 12 minutes left and the world is over. So I'm wondering, what's the rest of the book going to be about? Over half the book is the bibliography. Over half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the book,
wow.
I think it's like 8 or 9 hours long, the part that tells the story. So the research that went into this is just incredible. This isn't some blogger that just decided to make up a story. This is a woman who has been writing about war, all wars, World War II, for a long, long time. She did a lot of research on this. You know, one of the generals she interviews, and she names everybody. This isn't like it's, some unknown source. She names the people that are in these meetings. And the one general says, look, this could absolutely happen. There's no way you could make an argument that it can't happen. You might want to make an argument that it won't, but you can't make an argument that it can't, because it clearly can. And he said, look, it could happen tomorrow. And then he corrected himself. He said, I don't know what I'm saying. It could be happening right now.
Sure.
So
there's no doubt.
Yeah,
there's no doubt. Yeah.
Here's,
I'm looking forward to this one.
Here's another statistic that worries me a little bit. You know how we have, well, you may not know if you read about this stuff, and I do all the time. We have like facilities for the government in cases like this. Like the closest one to D.C. is Raven Rock Mountain in Pennsylvania. We have a facility, 2 miles under the mountain, and that's where the president and the cabinet all try to get to, and that's where they're going to run the government from. We have another one out in Colorado. I always forget the name of that one. There's a mountain out there, and we've got a facility. Cheyenne Mountain, that's the one in Colorado, right. So you guys do know this stuff. So do you realize what country in the world has the most extensive tunnel and bunker system like this? It's like ours. They take mountains.
I was told the Chinese did.
That's what I would have thought too. It's North Korea. North Korea has a more extensive system than any other country in the world. So what that tells me,
it's not shocking. I just wonder the quality of the system, though.
Well, here's the other thing.
I think the disconcerting thing is they have it for a reason.
That was my point. Not whether it's going to be effective, because I did learn something else, but the idea.
Right. No, I get it. Yep.
That the goofy nut job dictator has the best chance of surviving an all-out nuclear war than anybody else does. That may be what he's thinking.
Yeah, you may be thinking that.
Right, and
I hear right, Kevin. It's the thought process that's disturbing for sure.
And all of these facilities, Raven Rock, Cheyenne Mountain, they were designed when the size of bombs we were dropping was what we were dropping on, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The bombs today are like 400 times more powerful. So most of these facilities probably wouldn't withstand a hit.
Did you ever see the video of the ones the Russians dropped up there near the North Pole that was 10 times bigger than anything the Americans had? That thing, it's a pretty impressive sight to watch that on video. And I forget what they called it, but they had one. I forget how many megatons it was. That thing was just huge.
Yeah, I think we're up to kilotons.
Crazy.
I think that's I think we're measuring in kilotons now.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, we're going to bring Henry back. We've
Yep,
kept him silent
sure.
long enough. Henry, are you done beating on things?
Yeah.
Like, now it sounds like you're eating
There
lunch.
wasn't even that much going on. This new headset, it must be very sensitive. But you know what I'm thinking about when I'm listening to this, you know, how many times can you blow a person up, you know? But
No, that's the thing. It's so over the top, and you learn a lot of this. And it's not that I didn't know this. I've never seen it all put in one place with so much detail. And like, I had no idea that at one point we had like between 7,000 and 8,000 nuclear weapons around the world. We could have wiped out the world many, many times over, and we've slowly been getting rid of them. But we still have, you know, we have about 17 or 1,800. Russia has that many, and then there's 4 or 5 other countries. China has only like 300 or 400, but it's a good book. Read it. We'll listen to it. We're going to get to some phone calls because
it will definitely lead to global warming.
No doubt. Well, no. Remember, so see, now I got to give away something else. Yeah.
And then it'll make.
Then we go to
a nuclear ice age.
That's right. Then we go to nuclear winter. Right.
Yeah. But initially it's a little warm.
It would get pretty warm, yeah. These things produce. This was another statistic I thought was crazy. How do we even measure this? They claim that when that bomb goes off, the what do we call them? Thermonuclear. That's the most powerful. The heat generated is 4 to 5 times hotter than the center of the Earth. We're talking crazy high temperatures that you can't even.
During the initial explosion, they say it's as hot as the surface of the sun.
That's
right?
what it was. That's right. It's actually the sun. That's right. Yeah, I almost said that, and then I thought, no, that's insane. It can't be that hot. But you're right. It was that.
No, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy stuff.
Yes, sir.
All right. We're going to go to the phones. People might want to talk about trucking now. We'll see.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Matt, what's on your mind today?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I was wondering if I called the right show anymore.
You never know what you're going to get around here anymore. Sometimes I get bored with trucks.
It was turning into overnight.
Yep. I downloaded the book yesterday, so I'll probably start listening to it tomorrow.
Good.
So I'm calling to talk to Joel about cheap freight. He seems to stir up something with that.
Shit.
He doesn't have any opinions on that.
Yeah.
So Kevin, if you want to look, I sent you my profit gauges yesterday morning, I think, or I'll scroll back a little bit to see it. But my May numbers, my gross rate per mile was $1.84 a mile. Do I haul cheap freight?
Sounds like it.
According to a lot of people, you haul really cheap freight.
Garbage.
No, do you want to know my net?
Yeah.
$1.12.
Come on.
Yeah. So why would we want to know the net? I mean, who cares about that? It's all about the gross, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Now, I will give some credit to some of the commenters on your post there. I do when they come back and they say, well, cheap freight is anything below market value. Okay, I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Whatever the market value is for that lane at the current time.
Well, yeah.
But most people are trying to argue that out of a certain area, $1.50 or $1.80 is way too cheap. Well, coming out of Florida, now going into summer, rates, that would be a good rate.
Yeah.
Right.
Freight just sucks
For
getting out of Florida now that produce has ended. There's moving up into Georgia. All of our nursery stock, that's all pretty much come to an end. So yeah,
that's right.
It's very variable number, but I just really get a kick out of the arguments on it.
Oh, yeah.
It's nuts.
So, Matt, here's the question though: if a willing shipper is willing to pay a certain amount and a carrier is willing to haul it for that particular price, whatever that price may be, is that cheap freight?
No. Now, again,
Exactly.
if the average rate was $2.50 a mile and that carrier bid it at $1.50 a mile, I would say they bid it cheap. But
So
if anybody's
we had a guy that,
but if a
contracts right now, and you're actually competing with brokers and other trucking companies, I think they'd be shocked to see what some of this stuff is getting bid at.
So we had a guy that responded to the post, and I thought it was an excellent response. He said, average freight rates demonstrate the health of the industry, and your net profit demonstrates the health of your individual business. As owner-operators, we are concerned with our individual business and our net. We want to look at the average to gauge the industry, but we want to do what's profitable for us. We're either unprofitable or profitable. There is no such thing as a universal application of the word cheap freight. It does not happen.
Correct.
No.
Correct.
So yeah, I guess the point that you and I and everybody else tries making is when you run your operation efficiently, you don't have to worry about what the market is doing. We're not trying to say we should run cheap freight. We should drive rates down to make the guys that are inefficient go out of
not
business.
at all.
No.
The market does that on its own. We can't control the market.
Correct.
So we have to be able to adapt to the market.
You're 100% spot on here. And what happens is, as the guys that they don't care about their net, they're just concerned with their gross. As the market dives, they have to blame their faulty business strategy on somebody. So who becomes the big targets? It's the guys that take care of business become the targets. Oh, you're ruining it for everybody. No, you're the dumbass that didn't take care of business. You know what I mean?
Right.
Markets have always gone up and down. That's nothing new. They always move. And to pretend that you're going to get $4 a mile on freight or you're not starting your truck is just idiotic. I mean, there are times when it happens, and it's great when it does, but, you know, it's not something that you should ever base your business on or plan on, for sure.
Well, my goal is always to be at the best I can be in the market on the price, you know, on the rate, and be the lowest operating cost. Both. You know,
absolutely.
Right. I mean, that's the goal. I want the,
exactly.
I'm going after both.
Right. So you're playing the market from both sides, and that's the way it should be done.
I don't understand why anybody would think any
Right.
differently than that. I can't even understand the thought process that some of these guys have of why would I ever cut cost? I'll just get a better rate. Well,
Me either.
It was just senseless to argue with them when the rates were high. But this is when their whole model falls apart, and then they're crying and they're looking to blame everybody else. Now the government's got to fix things because they realize now, wait a minute, I can't get the rate I need no matter what I do. And that's when you've got a problem. But somehow they believe that the rate has to support their business model, and they're entitled to that.
They're just completely backwards. Completely backwards. They think the market exists to support their trucking operation. Well, it doesn't work that way.
And here's a great example of this. This used to make me crazy. Yeah. One of the other guys on Sirius, he was a guest on Mark Willis's show a lot and a couple of the other shows, Tim Brady. Been around a long time. I've had my run-ins with him over the years. He used to do this segment when he was a guest, and here's what he would do. He would tell people, if you call in and if you can give me these numbers, I'll give you your freight rate that you should be using. And all he would do would be he would ask for all their expenses like truck payment and all this other stuff. And then from their expenses, he would calculate a rate. And I'm like, wait a minute. you're doing this completely backwards. You can't do that.
So,
Absolutely.
That is so backwards.
Kevin,
Before you start the business, you have to go understand what the rates are and what they could potentially go down to, and then you have to build your business model to fit that, not the other way around.
That's right. Well, Kevin, there was a friend of mine that when I was starting up my business and I had put together all my business plan and all what my expected operating costs were, and I didn't put on rose-colored glasses with any of them. And I was trying, and I was going on my own authority and not using brokers and trying to figure out where I was going to be with it all. And I'll never forget that when I started talking to him about where the freight rate ought to be, when we were sitting at a diner near York, Pennsylvania, and he said to me, well, the first thing I want you to understand is freight rates have absolutely nothing to do with what it costs to operate that truck.
Correct. That is exactly true.
That's right.
Here's the other
Some
thing.
of the best advice I ever got.
Here's another one. That's a good one. That's pretty basic, but obviously it's not. A lot of people don't know it. Here's another one. The freight rate has almost, I will put the word almost in here, almost nothing to do with the value of the cargo in the trailer.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
You're correct. You're correct.
Mm-hmm.
It might have something to do with the skill level to move
Correct.
the material.
Which would
Right.
mean some freight that's more difficult should have a higher rate. I get that, but there is some really expensive freight that doesn't take much skill at all. They roll it in the trailer on pallets,
Sure.
and you drive it to the next place. That stuff pays about the same as bottled water, and it should, because the value of the cargo has nothing to do with anything.
So
Yep.
one of the huge disconnects out there, and Alec, you saw the post, and we always talk about supply and demand, and it pisses a lot of people off. It's not all supply and demand. There's 50 other reasons why the market moves. But at the end of the day, every reason that you bring up impacts supply and demand.
Exactly.
And that's what moves the market. I don't care what specific issue you bring up, it's going to impact supply and demand. It's just like we talk about the speed of trucks. Faster trucks negatively impact supply and demand. Because you're faster, you move more freight, you add capacity.
That's right.
They're part of the problem when you really look at it that way. And that's the way we should look at it.
You're just making excuses because we know you're the problem.
Cheating on your hours of service.
But
service,
cheating on hours of service, fast trucks. These all negatively impact supply and demand.
Yeah.
And people just can't get past that all these individual things they talk about drive the supply and demand balance. And if they understood that, I mean, it would be much easier to talk to them about individual issues.
Joel, I think you must have.
But the problem with
You must have missed
So
one
you mean
of the
that we
posts.
should have more flexibility in hours of service? I mean, that would fix it.
That's what we need.
I think you should be able to do your in-frame, Henry, on your resets without showing it on your logbook.
There you go.
It's perfectly, that's the way it should be. The time value.
Wait a minute.
The value of your time should go to zero.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. You're supposed to show that in your logbook?
You guys are missing something. There's new information out now, and you guys are missing it. Now, I know supply and demand has been kind of the rule, for decades since we started doing business, but you don't understand. The group NOAA has this figured out now. They wrote a long post about it the other day. They now understand why we're wrong, and they had all kinds of reasons. That supply and demand, they have now determined, only applies to products, and we deliver a service. So it doesn't count. That's what they're actually claiming now.
Okay. So, one day,
all right, hold on. Can you repeat that because it really didn't sink in the first time?
No, they were serious about this. They felt like, I swear it's a wonder they weren't asking when they're going to be nominated for a Nobel Prize in economics over this, because they got it figured out that supply and demand has nothing to do with trucking, only products, not services.
Okay, you've repeated it now, and it still isn't sinking in properly. I must be slow.
So freight capacity is not a commodity. That's the nexus of the thesis?
That seems to
freight
be what they're
capacity
trying
is
to
not
say.
a commodity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let me break this down a little easier for you, Alex. Here, let me break this down a little bit easier for you. So you have Taylor Swift over here putting on a concert. You have Alec Costeros over here putting on a concert, and you have 1,000 tickets to each. Whose tickets are going to sell for more? It's just supply and demand. People want to go see the other one.
Yeah, that's
Alex,
right.
sorry, but your tickets aren't selling. But
No.
oh my God,
I wouldn't sell a single one.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
my God.
Well, I'll buy one because I don't really like the other. So.
Well, Henry, let me do you a favor. I'm going to short sell.
Singing. I might tell you to quit singing, and we'll just go have a coffee or something.
Yeah,
But
there you go.
there you go.
Yeah. Now that might be a ticket worth attending.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, and we did have this conversation just yesterday with somebody online, and William, I'll just use his first name, and he has trouble with the fact that there are 50 other different reasons, and I think, with all due respect, everybody likes to overcomplicate markets. I don't know why trucking is so apparently overwhelmingly complicated that it defies all microeconomics.
It's a simple industry.
For a few centuries of business, and yet trucking.
Hey, Alec.
Somehow seems to be unique.
Sir. I'm going to put on Joel's hat for a minute. I don't do this very often. I'm going to put on Joel's hat. I'm going to push back on your statement. And here's why, because I used to say this too, and I had to stop and think about it. Why in this industry specifically, and I work in other industries and I don't see this nearly as much, but why do we push back on this whole supply and demand thing when it's so simple, it's so obvious, and it's consistent? You can see it over and over and over. But here's why, and I will give this to people. Supply and demand in our industry is far more complicated than almost any other industry I can think of. Supply and demand is pretty consistent in most other industries. For us, it's different in every single lane. Every lane has its own supply and demand balance, and it changes constantly. And we're in an industry where we don't necessarily know where the supply is. And the supply might be in the wrong place all the time based on where the demand is. That does complicate supply and demand in our industry.
Yeah, but
Kevin, I think it is complicated by one major fact, which is one of the reasons why in my business to start with, I only would run 2 cities.
That's a good point.
To try and learn the whole country, until you learned the whole country, it'd be time to retire.
That's a strategy we talk about all the time. And Matt, is Matt still on this call? Matt is still on this call. Matt, how long have you been focused on the Florida-Minnesota lane?
22 years ago. That's pretty
22 years on the same lane. It's not a coincidence that Matt puts out the kind of profit numbers he puts out, which are way above even people running a good business. 22 years focused on
it. I bet he knows that lane pretty well.
Yeah.
So
do you think he has a parking problem?
Here's the disconnect, Kevin. Kevin, here's the disconnect on this. What you're talking about the actual mechanics of the concept, where I'm just kind of talking about the whole supply and demand just as a simple concept.
Exactly.
No, so you're you're talking about the actual mechanic. The problem is we have people who don't even get the basic concept. They'll deny that it exists.
Correct.
Oh no,
that's a problem.
Right. That is a huge problem. Right.
Yeah. If you want to argue if you want to argue the mechanics of it, I'm down with that. I get it, Kevin. You're exactly right. It's complicated as hell, but the actual concept or theory is very simple.
I couldn't agree more.
argue the base theory, that's an issue.
Well,
they're lost.
The minute I
Right.
hear, and
You're right.
this, how many times have you heard this? Well, there's no such thing as a backhaul. My costs are the same no matter what direction I'm heading in.
Although, Kevin, I will say with my company, I did banish that word because it never does help the rate at all.
Well, it's just a non-issue. We can call it whatever we want. We can say it's wrong or whatever, but it is supply and demand. That's what I keep trying to point out to people. The cost of
Absolutely.
the value of the freight might not have anything to do with this. The lane where you live has nothing to do with this. Your costs have nothing to do with this. That's the point I'm trying to get across to people. And Joel, you're right.
Well, I guess
if they can't
I guess
get
what
that
I'm saying when I'm
simple
when I'm
concept,
negotiating a rate with a shipper, I never tell them it's a backhaul.
of course,
We never do.
It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just freight another direction.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
One of the big problems I think that we run into in this regard is, and you see this with fuel efficiency all the time, Kevin, how many times have you heard a guy say, well, I average between 7 and 10 miles a gallon? That's a range, not an average. And it's the same thing when you're looking at rates.
Joel,
they're looking at the range and not the average.
You just stole my line. I can't count how many times I've asked somebody, all right, tell me what your fuel mileage is. Yeah. Well, it's between, and I stop them. No, I'll say, tell me your average fuel economy. And they'll go, well, it's between. And as soon as I heard the word between, I stop and go, hold on. Let me give you a math lesson. An average is one number. I only want to hear one number come out of your mouth because that's what an average is. We'll start there. Then I probably will ask you about your real range. I want to know your lowest fuel mileage recorded and your highest in the last 30 days. That's why we have those numbers on our app, because the average tells me something. The range tells me something. All of those things matter.
The other one when you know that they don't know is when they say about. I get about.
About. Here's the other one.
So
their numbers will always be like whole numbers. I get about 7. Oh, okay. Or I get between 7 and 9. Okay, so you've never had a 5.6 and you've never had a 9.2. Well, what you're telling me is you don't really track it.
Exactly.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. That you're 100% correct. And we run into this not only with fuel mileage, we do the same thing with average speed.
Yep.
So when I look at average speed, and I've been working on this with my brother, and I've got Alec involved in this stuff, we're trying to establish the delta between the cruise control set speed and the average speed to kind of understand how that's going to impact our maintenance cost. But we have to have a true average speed, not this, I set my cruise at 65 or 70. That's not an average. It's not even close.
Not even close, right.
And then it devolves into, oh, you're a traffic hazard and all this stupid bullshit because we don't understand the difference between an average and a range.
Hey, Joel.
And it's that simple.
Yep.
And then when you get like Alec, then we start talking about weighted averages and all kinds of shit that will make your head explode. But that's I guess another discussion.
That's one of Alex's jobs, just to make your head explode.
I want to go back.
One of his specialties.
Because, Joel, you keep bringing up this concept of slow trucks being
a job benefit.
Unsafe.
Yeah.
And I keep wondering if slow trucks are so unsafe. Every time I travel across the country, when I travel usually from the West Coast to the East Coast, no matter which direction I go, I'm going to have a long pull somewhere. I keep wondering
Wait a minute, Kevin.
Those long
How
pulls.
can you most of the time go from west to east? Because you got to get back somewhere.
I assumed you would
It's
understand.
It's got to be half and half.
Hey, I just put my truck on a barge and travel around the world till I get back to the West Coast. I don't go the other way.
Okay.
So
you sounded like the guy that's always going uphill.
Here's what I'm wondering. Why aren't these long grades where trucks are down to 20 and 25 miles an hour, why aren't they just littered with crashes?
Exactly. Why do we see signs that say reduce speed coming into construction zones. Why don't we accelerate?
It's safer, right? That's what they tell us.
Yeah, right.
Safer to go fast.
We should be going 75 or 80 through a construction zone instead of 45 because it'd be much safer.
Well, here's why it would be safer.
If
I
you
can
listen
even
to the
explain
logic out on Facebook.
I can even explain it. If I go 75, I'm only in that construction zone a lot less time, so I must have less chance to get in an accident.
You're only in there for 3 seconds.
Right.
That's exactly right. Versus 6 seconds.
Yeah.
You've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I had to dump. I had to dump
Christ.
Matt. I almost forgot he was on the call, and we got to go take some calls. We're going to head north of the border. Patrick, go ahead.
Hello, guys.
Yes.
Nice having you back, Joel.
Hey.
I know you're on a vacation. We're going to have to get some new people.
It wasn't even an authorized vacation. He went rogue.
I don't think we'll pay him.
I just went, right?
That's right.
Oh, shit.
I commented on your post yesterday, actually, and I normally don't. I don't know how you guys have the brain power to deal with this stuff. I used to like the stuff. I'm like, I'm actually going to comment, and then I'm going to try to ignore the comments because it's going to be attacking. It's not fun. I figured it out though. Well, some stuff you're wrong about. I've never heard of a produce hauler that hauls 80,000 pounds. I thought every one of them hauled 90 plus. But
well, yeah, we forgot about that, right?
Yeah.
And
We skipped the scale.
Yeah.
They got a Canadian truck, right? They can hit triple digits easy on a Canadian truck. That's easy.
Sure, there you go.
That's
There
right.
you go.
That's right. I forgot about that.
No, the question I have is I'm looking to spec in the truck. Volvo or Freightliner, not sure which one I'm going to go with. If we can afford it, I got a price quote on the new Volvo, and it was like $280,000 plus tax. Welcome to the Canadian exchange, right?
Wow.
Sheesh. So the problem I have.
280,000 is. I'm just doing the exchange. It's about 175,000 US.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah, ish. Yeah. The only benefit's fuel's cheap. I run a lot of short, steep hills, eastern Canada. And I run into the same problems up in Canada. Nobody knows how to spec a truck. They just order it in, and so I'm like, is this going to be working for me? So when it comes to rear end ratio, you talk about the 215, I'd like to do it, but my average weight's probably 90,000 pounds, 90 to 96 average weight. Well, on short steep hills, 50%
Hey,
of the
Patrick,
time, I'll say.
Patrick, that was a range.
Yeah.
Don't say average and then give us a range.
I'm sorry. I'm in an LTL business. You know, it's not.
Hey, Patrick. Patrick, being in the LTL business does not change mathematical rules.
I'm sorry. All right. My range.
There you go. That's better.
Not 90 to 96,000 pounds. Hardly ever under 80. Very seldom. Is 215 going to be too low of a gear ratio doing a lot of short, steep hills?
It will not be productive for you. You're going to want to back this up. Now, they do a 247 I-torque, I think specifically for Canada. I think you can also get it in 2.39. But I know for sure 247, and that's probably where I'd go with that type of weight with the short, steep hills. I think you'd be much better off than running a 215.
Okay. Yeah,
Plus, he's not going to hit triple digits anyway.
Right. I would still go with the 13-speed I-shift, and they'll tell you that you don't need it, and it is true that is not required. But that very deep reduction when you're backing up, if you get into tight spots or if you have multiple axles on the trailer or spread axles, it's really, really nice to have that deep reduction. It's slow, controlled backing, getting under trailers, sliding tandems. It's just a really nice option to have. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, we have a lot of Tridem containers loaded full. So.
All right. Yep.
unfortunately, we can't do wide base singles because some of our provinces don't
Right.
believe that we
Right.
can haul that weight.
And that's right, and that's okay. I mean, they've got duals out nowadays that are,
Very
just
good.
about on par with the wide base singles. So you should be just fine that way. And in fact, up in Canada with the weather, I may actually lean towards a decent dual tire in that application for sure. The one thing that we have to keep in mind also, and somebody had asked me this question online. They said, could you please explain how going from a 455 to a 500 would negatively impact fuel efficiency? If you gear this right, it won't. We all kind of think that if we have a 500 horsepower engine, the second we step on the accelerator, all 500 horsepower are up and running, and it doesn't work that way. So when we go to the higher horsepower, higher torque, as long as it's made at lower RPM, it can enhance efficiency. And so, the TC now is available as a 500 1950, where in the past we had to go with the VGT that was making peak torque at closer to 1100 RPM. So definitely want to think about the TC in this application at the 500 1950 rating.
Yeah, I'm not, horsepower doesn't matter. I have a 500 Cummins now with 308s and 1850 torque.
Well, here's why it
It's all
matters
right.
when we start to gear like this. It becomes important to make it usable at the lower RPM, because if we're not usable at the lower RPM with the weights that you're pulling, then it just kind of defeated the purpose, and you're not going to be happy with the truck. So it's very important that we get that power and torque curve to line up with the gearing. And I'm with you. I don't really care that it's 500 horsepower, because that 500 is happening out in an area that I don't get to, but I need that horsepower at the front end of the torque curve. Now, it's not going to be 500. It may be 375 horsepower at 850 RPM, but horsepower ultimately determines how fast that truck's going to move. Torque will give you the potential of the weight it can move, but horsepower is the rate at which work is done. So we need to have enough horsepower at the front side of that power and torque curve to make it usable at that lower RPM.
Okay, that sounds good. I just wasn't sure. Nobody, obviously dealers, they don't have any idea what rear end ratio to put in. They're like, oh no, this will be fine. I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure Joel said it wasn't good to go with that low or tall of a gear. But I'll just double check before I say, hey, let's order a $300,000 truck.
Feel free to shoot us an email with your spec on it over to the Alpha Drivers email, either mine or Alec. It's Joel at alphadrivers-tc.com.
Hey, Joel.
And we can double check that for you.
Joel.
Uh-huh.
You might want to make sure you attend the Volvo Dealers Convention to find out if they're putting a contract out on your head or something.
Brother, I actually now listen. They actually had me at training sessions with every dealership in the country where I explained this stuff to salespeople, and it was 8-hour sessions.
It has to be.
And
it really needs to be.
Most of them choose not to attend.
Right. Now I can see.
Yeah, it does. There's no doubt.
And
that same training that me and Dwayne gave you.
Yeah.
We took that to every dealership in the country.
Joel, let's. I'm gonna. I don't know what's going on with me today. I'm gonna play devil's advocate again. I'm actually gonna defend.
All right.
I'm actually gonna defend these guys. In reality, think about what the four of us have been through for how long. We eat, sleep, breathe this stuff, and I still struggle with some of these concepts. It takes me a while to get some of these. The whole downsped engine architecture was a tough one, so in reality, I don't see ever that salespeople are going to understand this stuff. I mean, even if you run them through an 8-hour class, I mean, I can teach a lot of stuff in 8 hours. You can't absorb enough in 8 hours is part of the problem.
I don't disagree at all.
I'm going to play devil's advocate with you, Kevin.
Okay.
So, having gotten to know a lot of these salespeople, if they sell you the wrong truck, typically they'll make more money. when you go to trade that truck in, it'll be easier for them to sell again, which still make more money.
That's what I mean. There's no incentive for them to learn this, and even if they had the incentive
to do the opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if we gave them an incentive, I don't know that we're capable of getting them to understand this enough to be able. So Volvo's model I like. I hope it keeps growing. Volvo builds the spec and makes it much, much easier. And if they build enough specs, then you could teach a salesperson. But trying to get a salesperson how to do all these specs one at a time and understand the physics and what's going on is not going to happen.
Well, most of your salespeople have their standard spec that for some reason they guard like it's,
right.
Yeah.
like it's Kentucky Fried Chicken.
The original copy of the Constitution or something.
Yeah.
And then they make minor alterations to it to whoever calls in. That's the most common practice.
So let me tell you why all this stuff's going out the door, Kevin. So in the past, you're exactly right. We had so many choices. We could put together different combinations. We had salespeople that, they hone their craft. They are handshakers and baby kissers. They are not mechanical engineers. And it's all about the relationship and not the mechanics of the truck that's most important to the majority of salespeople. So we've always had this struggle in the industry. Here comes the big, bad, evil EPA is going to solve this for us because they are going to have requirements that we have to meet in terms of emissions and fuel efficiency that are going to take the multiple choices away. And you are simply going to have like 3 on-highway packages to choose from as far as powertrain combinations. And that's going to be it. So all this stuff is going to go away. The salespeople will all essentially be selling the most efficient powertrain available from that manufacturer because of EPA rules. And I expect that in about 2 to 3 years, we're going to see a huge change in the dynamic that we're talking about with salespeople.
I think you're right.
And I think that's also going to do a huge jump for the efficiency and the reliability of the trucks, because most of the reliability problems that I see are because you still can put, especially electronically, so many different combinations together and everything affects one another. If they got more like, Ford when they're building, 250,000 F-150s, every electronic parameter is the same on all of them. And all this different stuff is what causes a lot of the problems.
Hey, Patrick, did we answer your questions?
The talk about going up the hills, even the salespeople are saying the same thing. When you said try to spec something, they just you'll never get up the hill.
See, that's you
Yeah.
immediately know.
I have a guy in Colorado that put together a 216 400 DD 15 1750 foot-pound of torque, and he lives in the Denver area out near you, Alec, and you know him, but his salesman told him he wouldn't be able to get over the mountain. Somehow he's gotten home.
Here's the best way to handle this when you're at a Volvo dealership, and I'm assuming Freightliner and all the rest of them can do the same thing. You go in, you tell them, I want a 2:16 ratio with an overdrive transmission. They say, you can't go up a hill. Say, please provide me the tractive effort calculation that shows me that. And they can do that. They won't be able to give you that calculation. So that is how you stop that shit just dead in the water. Just ask for the tractive effort calculation. All that bullshit goes away at that point.
There you go.
Yeah, like all they tell you, no, you won't get up a hill without a 355. What? Why? Anyway, guys,
exactly.
I know you got more calls, so have a great weekend.
All right.
Glad I was able to make it live show to call in.
Thanks for the call. Let's we're gonna
enjoy it up there.
We're gonna stay north of the. We got to start blasting through some calls here, guys. You must all be recruiting, and we're.
No, I was doing foundry work.
Yeah.
When I'm recruiting, you get mad. When I do foundry work, you get upset. I just don't understand, Kevin.
Henry, we're going to have a performance review meeting here.
An intervention.
Yeah.
All right, I can see this.
All right. We're gonna.
And we haven't even talked about RVs today.
Well, that's coming. We talked about nuclear war. Come on. Come on.
What good's a camper after that?
Yeah, we're going to
Well,
stay.
Kevin just bought a hardened RV.
I did.
Battle hard.
One of the new sponsors I'm trying to bring on board is a company called EMP Shield.
There you go.
Talk about.
There you go.
So now I want the camper
we're good. We're good for nuclear blasts and solar flares and everything with that.
That's right.
Awesome.
That's right. Here's what I'm wondering.
I want the camper from Stripes. I'll be good.
The whole EMP, the whole EMP shield kind of reminds me of. I went to a conference and it was all about living longer, not necessarily just being healthier, but actually extending your lifespan. And they're promoting all this stuff, supplements and machines and procedures. And I would go up to every booth and I would say, could you please tell me how you figured out this is actually going to work? And I would just get the deer in the headlights look, and they'd be like, what do you mean? And I'd be like, please tell me how you could ever prove to me that if I take your product for the next, I don't know, how long was I supposed to live? 30 years, that you can show me I'm going to get an extra 5. Please show me the research and how you figured all this out. And they'd all look at me like, well, they had no answers for that. How do we know the EMP shield actually works?
Hopefully we've tested it, right?
Well, we can't. You can't create an EMP. What are we testing it against?
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure. But every book I read, they say
I'll have to find out.
We did some very limited testing of EMPs back in the 50s or 60s when we were still blowing up nuclear weapons testing stuff, but we don't do any of that. So I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, Kevin, real quick.
Yeah.
I got a email with somebody sent me a truck over. It was a Nextrans truck for sale. It's a 2024 Volvo. Run away from this truck. It is a 285 ratio. It has a 12,005 front axle. It's just run away.
Bad specs.
I don't even care what the price is. Run away from it.
Specs. Yep. Yes. Awful. That's some salesman's sweet spot, like Henry was talking about. That's the only reason that truck exists.
And that's exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah. All right. We're going to stay north of the border. Talon, welcome.
Well, to get started, Chelsea sent you over a truck, and I think you should read those specs off to Joel.
All right. Let me see what I got here.
Okay.
Okay, there's the truck. I had to go back. I got a bunch of oil samples. Looks like we're going to be doing a bunch of oil samples. 2024 Volvo. 605 horsepower Cummins ISX. 18 speed, 430 rears.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
I'm assuming we're pulling an oil rig around or something.
This is a nice one.
I don't know. I just found it on their website and thought it was funny.
That is.
Yeah, that is kind of funny. Well, it depends what they're doing with it. I mean, if they're in the oil field, they're moving something 300,000-400,000 pounds around. Okay, I kind of get it, but yeah, if that's on the road at all, that's a joke.
That is.
Okay, so now I'm looking to find a truck, and I'm going to be pulling Super Bs in Canada and doing off-road. So, what rear ends would I be looking for as far as Volvo or Freightliner goes? And do you have any information for a Cummins?
So as far as ratio goes, what's your average gross combination vehicle weight going to be?
Average is about 140, and when I'm doing off-road stuff, it'll be closer to 160.
Okay, so you're going to be very limited on what you can do with rear axle ratios, especially with the Cummins. When you go with the higher horsepower Cummins, they don't make the torque down low like the Volvo and the Freightliner does. So you're going to have a more traditional rate. It's probably going to end up in that 355 to 342 range, I'm assuming, depending on the transmission reduction. You're not going to benefit a whole lot from a downsped powertrain in that application. So what they're basically going to look at, they're going to look at the manufacturer's ratings for that gross combination vehicle weight, and the fact that you're taking it off-road. You're not going to have a lot of choices here.
Now, the plus side is that I'm going to be very hard-pressed to see more than 55 mile an hour. So speed won't really be an issue.
Sure. Then you're going to be fine with a 370 or a 355 or even a 390 if you're only running 55 mile an hour. And depending on the transmission, are you looking for a manual or an automated manual?
If it's a Cummins, it'll be a manual 18-speed. If it's Freightliner or Volvo, it'll be the automated.
So let me ask you something, and I'm not up on the manual transmissions like I used to be, but I was looking through the Eaton site, and apparently they have a 15-speed single overdrive deep reduction transmission manual available that had a much deeper reduction than an 18-speed, and because you're not going that fast, the single overdrive would work just fine. I would be looking real hard at that. That thing looked pretty awesome to me as far as a manual goes, and I don't get excited about manuals very often, but I don't know that it's available. Maybe it was a legacy transmission. I have no idea, but I would ask the question if that 15-speed is available. As far as that application with the Volvo side, with the automated, because it's a Cummins, you won't be able to get an I-shift. I think you're stuck with Eaton.
Well, I do like Volvo and Detroit's motors. I'm thinking if I go try to broaden my range, I can't get a Volvo and a Kenworth and so on. So
sure. So if you do go with a Volvo, it would be a 500 horsepower turbo compound with a 14-speed, and you're probably going to be in that same ratio. You're probably going to be around 358-ish, 355, right in that range. Remember, though, with the I-shift, you have 42-to-1 reduction, so you're going to have much deeper reduction than that 18-speed has, way deeper reduction. So when you get off-road, you will have better versatility, there's no doubt.
Well, the truck I was doing this with was a 355, or a 505 VGT Mac with 325s, and it just struggled with startability. Once I got rolling, it was fine.
Sure. And that's right. So, I mean, you could, since you have that as a baseline and you know that 325 works for you, as long as that 325 falls in within the manufacturer specs for that type of weight, put a 14-speed with that, and you should not have a startability issue with that type of weight.
Yeah, that was also the 12-speed, and that truck was spec to pull reefer, not Super B. So.
Sure. Yeah, no, I hear you. So that's the whole idea behind the 14-speed I-shift, is it has such a wide range. They wanted to enable you to have a little bit of highway speed capability, even though you're speccing a heavy off-highway capable truck. It kind of gives you the best of both worlds. So if you know that 325 is acceptable, especially with a 505 VGT, it's going to be much stronger with the TC because we make more horsepower at lower RPM, and you'd have the benefit of the 14-speed on top of it. It should do you very well.
Okay. And Henry, what do you have as far as Freightliner?
On Freightliner, do heavy haul? Yeah, you could do. I wasn't paying attention so heavy because I was there, but you could do 285s with an overdrive would work for that. Well, I don't do much heavy haul. That would get you down geared low enough with the overdrive transmission. With
for
anything from a
160,000 pound weight, that would be okay with the 285?
I believe it would be. I don't spec that. What's really funny, and it was just recent, up there hauling the Michigan Specials, they ended up using some used Meyer trucks with DD13s. And they weren't even set up to be doing anything like that. And, well, they're looking to build more like that because it worked out better than what they had before from an efficiency, and they're holding up, which is what shocked them. So even on that with efficiency, as long as you have enough gear to get you out of the hole, the rest of it isn't going to matter much.
Yeah, that was kind of the story with my Mac, and the only reason I'm getting out of that is because it's deleted, and I don't want that.
Yeah, I understand that. But, yeah, I wouldn't even be afraid of well, 285 is about probably where I would go, so you have a little bit more at the bottom. I wish we had the 14-speed like Volvo has, but we don't have that yet.
Okay.
The only thing that you may run into, and I agree with Henry that the 285 may work. Now, I'm not sure about off-road when you get onto soft ground if a 285 is going to start 160,000. I think it's going to struggle, but you will be limited by
308.
Right. You may be limited more by the manufacturer's capacity on the axle than what will actually work or not. And that's probably what's going to dictate the lowest ratio you could get into. When you go in and say, I do 160 off-road, they're going to look at 46,000-pound rear axles, and they're going to say, here's the ratios we have available, and this is as low as you can go.
And you need a double frame and a dozen other things. But
actually,
yeah, I don't.
Up here, we found that double frame is kind of an Achilles heel.
I can imagine.
The single frame is much better because the rust jacking in the double frame makes the truck useless in 5 years.
Yep, I agree with you completely.
I think Volvo really kind of led the charge on that taller frame rail to get rid of the double frame, the necessity for it. So I think most of the other manufacturers are also offering that as an option, a much taller frame rail, so you can get rid of that double frame.
What we really need is that 17-liter up here.
I hear you. For
There
Canada,
you go.
I think it makes some sense.
There you go.
I hear you.
I was really shocked, though, by that outfit when the trucks were in short supply, and they ended up using used Meyer grocery trucks for Michigan Specials.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey,
and it worked.
Yesterday, I got a lesson in dissimilar metals. I went to take a garden hose off of a pressure washer, and the end of the garden hose was aluminum, and the fitting on the pressure washer was copper, and they had welded themselves together.
I am having an absolute fit with that same issue, Kevin. All these newer hoses have them aluminum fittings on them, and if you don't unscrew them every time,
do not leave those.
You're messed up.
Do not leave those connected to copper. I will tell you that is a serious bond. Let's go to.
Well, I had one where.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I've literally had to grind and cut them off.
That's what I ended up doing with this one. I had to ruin both fittings. I could not.
That's what we heard this morning.
Yeah, that's right. That's what you were doing. All right, we're going to get to some calls. We're going to be here all day if we don't get serious. Stop goofing around, guys. This is serious stuff. Lyle, welcome.
Well, yes, on that serious stuff with your book, I had to comment on that because there's no way it can happen in 6 seconds. Because after she talked to that general, the general decided to check the fuel and how long it'd been in those rockets, and he decided to change it, and they hired me to haul the fuel. Well, there's 10 trucks in front of me before I could get up there, and by the time I got up there, they went on lunch break.
Hey,
by the time I got loaded, I didn't have but 3 hours left of drive time.
Hey,
because the demand from the DOT says I got to do it 14 hours.
Lyle, be careful. Don't be giving our secrets away. The North Koreans monitor this show.
Yeah, I bet they do. Anyway, I think that personally, as far as demand, supply and demand, and how fast truckers are driving is more because of our limitation on hours than it is on the supply and demand. And then as far as rates go, It's just how much difference that the broker can say he can get on how cheap I'll haul it compared to what he gets paid.
That's his job.
I know.
Hey, Henry, I was informed.
Anyway.
I'm sorry, I got to correct you here. I was informed the other day. They were screaming this at me. The broker's job is to find freight for my truck. They were screaming that at me. And I was laughing, and I said, you guys couldn't have this more wrong if you tried. Come on, really? That you believe this? And they couldn't understand why they were so wrong about that. They kept screaming, it's the broker's job to find freight for my truck. No, it's not. Not at all.
No, it's the fleet owners or the owner of the truck's job to find freight.
Exactly. The broker is being paid to find the broker is being paid to find a truck for that freight, not the other way around. Not freight for your truck. Nobody's paying him to find freight for your truck.
The trucker to haul it.
Yeah. I at that point, I thought, okay, there's no hope.
When we go down that, if we say it's the hours, if we increase the hours we can drive or make it unlimited, what in the world would that do to supply and demand? Now, let me think. Oh, yeah, rates.
Well, rates would not go up, I can tell you that.
I can tell you, too. Well, especially when it comes to the argument that I always hear, because I think they should have a special provision, and they're like, but what if you run out of hours 1 hour from home? You're not 1 hour from home. You're 11 hours from home.
Yeah, you
Actually,
are now.
about 11 and a half with the pre and post trip.
What's that?
Right. Yep.
All right.
That's what personal conveyance is for.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. What was I thinking?
All right. What do you mean?
Drive our 11 hours in a 24-hour period.
Henry,
all be good, right?
Isn't there an exemption from the pre and post trip if I don't have any warning lights on my dash?
As long as your cell phone is charged, you're good.
Okay, got it. Lyle, are we looking at an oil sample here?
Yes, I bought the truck, and I decided to employ Kevin Rutherford's formula for this truck.
Okay.
So they said the oil was changed. I pulled an oil sample, and I sent it off. I didn't change the oil. I had no idea what oil they had in it. When it needed oil, I put some in. It uses, well, it really doesn't even use a gallon in 25,000. So this will be, I think, my third oil sample. And it's got more than one kind of oil in it, 2 or 3 kinds of different oil. I had some in a barrel at home that said 40 on it. So it sounded good, and it was a diesel oil, so I put that in there. So Kevin said that all the oils are about the same for the most part, as long as they got diesel additives in it. And additives don't make any difference other than what they put in the actual oil. Of course, I may be adding a little to what Kevin says, but... Anyway, I decided I would only change the oil when the samples tell me to.
Okay.
So I have changed the filter twice. And you have the last sample I did in front of you, and I'm fixing to pull a sample in about, when I get home this time.
So we're at 51.
So is there something I need to be concerned about in that sample?
51,000 miles on the oil, right?
Correct.
And it's a Volvo truck. What year and what engine?
The 15D13 engine.
Okay. For 51,000 miles.
Earlier, those.
The only thing that concerns me just a little bit, your silicon is right at 10. Something happened. Did anybody, has the valve cover been taken off or anything opened up on the engine?
Yes, twice.
Okay. Then that would explain the high silicon.
There you go.
So we
put, I personally put in 2 new seals, and then they did an overhead.
Got it. Okay.
5,000 miles ago.
That explains the silicon. We can ignore that.
That'll do it.
Are you running catalyst?
And I did put a fleet air filter on it.
Well, good, and I can see that. Are you
Am I
running catalyst?
Yes, absolutely, since day one.
Okay, so your iron is high, but the catalyst explains that. Joel, what would cause high aluminum on one of these engines when we don't really have many other wear metals? 27 parts per
good
million.
question.
That's kind of a big number on aluminum. It's climbing, and wear metals will climb, but to have 27 parts per million of aluminum now seems kind of excessive.
Yeah, I hear you.
Would that be in the makeup oil? As an
I doubt it.
No.
No, not at 27 parts per minute. No way. That's interesting. When they done the overhead, did they do anything with exhaust plungers?
No.
They didn't verify that they were in adjustment at all?
Oh, now that I can't answer. They said there was nothing way out. There was a couple that were more out than others, but not out of spec. I have no idea how long it's been since I bought it.
Did they do a cylinder balance test on it?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so we got nothing to work with there.
What is it? Can you explain what that is for me?
So a cylinder balance test is, it measures the amount of fueling difference between the cylinders, and that gives you an indication of how well the overhead's adjusted. So the lower the difference between each cylinder, the better they had that overhead adjusted. So typically, when I have an overhead run, I'll make them do a cylinder balance test beforehand, and then after to see the improvement, to see what happened. My fear is if they didn't do your exhaust plungers, then as soon as you started that truck, you're right back out of adjustment. And if they didn't do them and your exhaust plungers are out, this may be where that aluminum's coming from, because things are shaking and vibrating in there. When you run the engine brake, do you notice any unusual vibrations on any of the settings?
No. However, sitting at an idle, the whole truck would vibrate, and if I go up 100 RPM on it, it would disappear. But since they did the overhead, at idle, the vibration has disappeared.
Okay. Well, maybe they did do the exhaust plungers then. You would have to ask them to see if they verified those exhaust plungers, because you still most likely have the old style on there. You don't have the laser welded plungers, and there is a procedure from Volvo that tells you, if you have the old style plungers, exactly how to verify them and then how to adjust them and keep them in place until the next overhead so they don't back out. That's been one of the huge issues with Volvo Power, why the injectors tend to break seals on the cups. We get the geometry angles wrong on the overhead because nobody was adjusting the exhaust plungers. It would rock the entire injector, break the seal, and the cups would go bad. So hopefully they done that part.
When is the cutoff year that they put the better ones
2019.
Oh, okay, yeah, this definitely would not have.
Yeah, most likely. Now they did upgrade some. So have you owned the truck the entire time, or you bought it used, or what?
Oh no, I just bought it in November at $920,000.
Okay. All right. They'll know. I mean, they can run the VIN number and they'll tell you if they've been upgraded or if you still have the originals in there. You've got 920,000 miles on this thing. That aluminum's bugging me. I'm gonna ask one of my techs. I'm gonna shoot them a message here and see what their thoughts are on that. See if I can get a hold of anybody.
I'm at 990 right now on the mileage. That's what I've put right at 60,000 on it. 70.
Gotcha. Okay.
So other than the iron,
to answer your question, I'm not sure where the aluminum would be coming from, right off the top of my head.
So at what point do you change the oil on iron?
I don't, especially with the catalyst. And some people say, well, is the catalyst going to cover up a problem I might have? Typically, we don't ever see just iron. So, and if there's wear metals, there's almost always going to be a reason. Fuel dilution, coolant intrusion, silicon, something that caused the wear metals. So even though having the catalyst in there kind of screws up the iron reading, if you know how to read them, and that's why I kind of focused on the aluminum here. The iron is explained away. The other metals aren't high. Why are we only seeing aluminum?
It is a little odd. One thing you may want to do to save a little bit of money here, since this is a Volvo, you can buy extended life oil filters, and they'll go 100,000 miles before you have to change them. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, do it at 50 or 60. But within 50,000 miles, there's no way that you need to be changing them 3 times on a Volvo, because you have 2 full flows, you have 1 bypass down there, and ask them specifically for the extended life filters, and you should be able to get out 100,000 miles on oil filters.
Oh, on a set of oil filters. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Wow,
yep.
That's different.
Yeah, that'll save you some money.
Okay. On the silicon, where is the silicon level that you begin to worry about?
10. And you're right at 10. But if you've been in the engine, then we just ignore it completely. I mean, I've seen that silicon number go up into the 20s just because we opened up the valve cover.
Kevin?
Yes.
Oh, you're wobbling out, Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin, you were breaking up bad.
Huh. Any better now?
No.
No?
No.
Well, that's odd. Maybe somebody's telling me.
Good, but not Kevin.
Maybe somebody's telling me it's time to quit today.
I think the missiles have launched.
Is it so bad that I should try to reconnect?
Yeah, try to reconnect.
All right. Lyle,
we'll take the show from here, Kevin. You try to reconnect. Work on that connection.
Everybody else is clear.
We're going to try to try to recruit a clear signal.
You guys continue the show, and I'm going to try to reconnect. Let me get you started on a call. Let's do that. Which one should I pick here? We're going to go to Tony in Texas. You guys talk to Tony. I'm going to go reconnect. Tony, go ahead.
Right. Yeah, now's not a good time to take a bath. But if my signal's no good, Paul, let me know.
Ready to connect. Click Connect to show now. You are connected as the host. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-in Studio web interface. Audio recording is on.
Hold on a second here. So when you're looking at these trucks and you're shopping for them, any truck that has any Volvo that has a front axle capacity of 12,500 pounds, just forget it. You're going to be overloaded everywhere you go, getting aerodynamically correct to keep the trailer pushed up against the cab. So for me, that would be a no-go. This one is 12.5. So in the 14, 13, and 12-speed I shifts, the overdrive ratio is 0.785. And then you also have the option of a direct drive, 1-to-1. So that 227, if it has a 12-speed, that is probably a direct drive.
It's a 247, and so I don't have to check that. I don't have to ask the salesman that. You just know that
Sure.
If it's a 12-speed, it is a 0.76, but the only thing is the 12.5 front axle.
The 12.5 front axle, that's a deal breaker for me because you will be overloaded constantly with it. It needs to be at least 13.2. Why salespeople do that, I have no clue.
Explain that
keeps
to
the
me
price down.
because how is the front axle over 12.5?
So the Volvo design is a setback front axle. And by design, we want to get out to up to 14.6. I've run 14.6 front axles on mine. So you're legally allowed to go to the capacity of the front axle. A lot of people think 12,000 pound is the limit on the front axle. It is not. So when you have a higher capacity front axle, this allows you to move the trailer closer to the cab in order to enhance your aerodynamic efficiency. And it is pretty significant when you close that gap up if you're looking for fuel mileage. With that 12.5 front axle, you're going to have to run a 60, 65-inch gap at times when you're nose heavy on the trailer in order to get legal, and it's going to kill you fuel efficiency-wise.
Where does that put the fifth wheel? Are you saying that you have to put the fifth wheel behind the middle of the tandem in order to get weight off of the front axle all the time?
That is exactly what you're going to do. It's just like a teeter-totter, and if you need to remove weight, you're going to be backing the fifth wheel up, and it's going to increase your gap. I'll send you a picture of my truck, and you can see where the fifth wheel location is. Ultimately, I would love to see every truck with a 14.6 front axle, because then you don't have to worry about fuel capacity and fifth wheel position. All that shit goes away. You can keep a nice tight gap and you can carry fuel. With a 12.5, you're always playing this damn game of, okay, now I'm running a half a tank and I got to back the trailer up. And you can eliminate all that nonsense with the right capacity front axle. 13.2 should be the minimum steer axle capacity that you're looking for. And that is very common on the aerodynamic setback front axle trucks. I prefer 14.6, but you can get away with 13.2.
What would the front axle be at normally with a normal load, like with that type of? Because this is the first time I'm hearing that Volvos are built like this. So if I haul a normal load, what's it going to be at?
So let's just suppose you're hauling a load like I've got right now. I've got 44,000 pounds gross on. It's nutritional sports drinks on here. I'm at 13,220 on the front axle right now, and I'm maintaining a very tight gap.
By the way, Joel, you said 44,000 gross. That's the cargo weight.
Yes, not gross. That's the cargo weight. Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, we're right close to 78.5 on the gross.
So, Tony, what Joel is saying is that in order to maintain good aerodynamics, if you only had a 12.5 front axle, you would have to move that fifth wheel back a long way, and you'd open up the trailer gap.
Right.
Correct. And not only
I wouldn't do that. I would run it overweight on the front axle.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is buy a truck where you don't have to do that. You want to be legal right out of the gate. So Yep.
Well, yeah.
There's nothing special about these trucks that you would send as far as their specs go. I'm looking at the tires on the 2020, and it's got some Chinese open-shouldered garbage on there that you definitely don't want. That thing is going to kill you. Between the 12.5 front axle and the Chinese drive tires on that, you're going to be really disappointed with the fuel efficiency of that truck.
Well, he's going to switch out my super singles on it because they don't want to sell a truck with super singles anyway. So he would do that for me.
I gotcha.
But
okay.
So I'm considering whether to tell him to stop moving it to Tampa for me in Jacksonville because of that 12.5 race.
Yeah. I would skip it. The other part of this is make sure that them axles have parallel hubs on them if you're going to put the wide base singles on them, because if they have the standard hub, you're going to have bearing wear issues, and not all drive axle hubs have parallel spindles. So you need to find out if it has a parallel spindle hub on the drive axle as well if you're going to put wide base singles on it, because you want to go to a 0-degree offset if possible. I mean, you can go to the wider ones, but when you do go to a 2-degree offset with a non-parallel hub, that's where you really start to get into bearing wear issues, axle flex, goofy tire wear, all kinds of bullshit starts to happen then.
Yeah, and he's given me all this finance crap, 14%, not interested with no cash down. So that truck's probably out anyway.
Gotcha.
Now's my chance to talk about
like
PACCAR. Since Kevin's not here, I'm saying this. I mean, this PACCAR, no rebuild, no anything in 963,000 miles. Yes, I know I had to put a coolant hose on it last night. Was pretty scared, but that's about it. In 6-7 years, it's still running strong. I tried with Volvo, but looks like I'm going to have to keep looking. That
Gotcha.
said was run away from the new one. That was 247. Does that change your mind at all?
Not with that front axle, it doesn't. In fact, it almost makes it worse. When we get a downsped powertrain and we don't have the front axle capacity to keep the gap closed, when we have to open that gap up, then the horsepower requirement at speed goes up, and it just is absolutely defeating the whole concept of the downsped powertrain and running at low RPM. Why the salespeople can't figure this out, it's kind of beyond me, but you're not going to be happy with that 12.5 front on a downsped powertrain for sure.
Here's the thing. With that truck, they must think we're idiots because not only did I not know about the front axle, but also he wants 195 for it. It's got no idle certification, no California certification. They didn't put it in when they built the truck. So he said basically, name your price on that truck. So I did. I said, if you can get it, I thought closer to 100,000. This truck has, I think, I thought 1,000 miles on it, but it's PC, brand new.
1,300. Yeah.
He said, sorry, can't do that, but I wonder what somebody could get it for.
Yeah, I mean, it just scares me. They got a deer guard on the front with a 12.5 front axle, so they put even more weight out there. The TC engine's a little heavier than the VGT. Yeah. I mean, this becomes problematic for sure. So you want to be very, very careful at any price on this truck. About the only way that I would be interested in it is if they said, okay, we'll swap out the front axle and recertify it for 13.2 or 14.6. At that point, I would say, okay, they're not going to do that. Some joker will buy that. Just make sure that you don't buy it.
Hey, Joel.
Well, what in the world are you talking about? Recertify? Don't you have to rebuild it?
Well, what they'll do is they'll swap the beam and the springs out, and they'll put new beam and springs underneath it, and then Volvo will have to send you a recertification that says that's actually a 13.2 front axle.
Okay, that's what I'm probably going to tell them, but now that I think about the money, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, don't bother.
Right. No, I'm with you. That's, yes.
Move on. And I am here, by the way. Hey, Joel. The deer guard gives you a good place to mount your bug deflector.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Here's what you can do. You take the deer guard off, and so you get the weight down. You sell that, and then you can use that to pay for the other.
Here's another way that deer guard is helpful. You could strap helium balloons to the deer guard and take some weight off.
That's right.
With
there
the
you
helium
go.
balloons. And there you go.
Lighten it up. We got this figured out. We're getting an awful lot of calls from the frozen north today. We're going to Alberta. Merv, welcome.
Good morning. I've got a couple of questions. I've got a couple of questions. One for Henry about what kind of specs I should be running if I went with a Freightliner, and like model years, I wouldn't be looking at new.
What's your operation?
I'm flat deck, do some over-dimensional stuff. I run from Alberta down to Texas, lots of hills, lots of wind. What else you need to know? Five axle, 8,000 pounds.
Quite simply, if you're looking at used, I'd look at the used Maverick trucks. They have a lot of DD13s, 216s, 228s, mid-roofs, That'll serve you well. They're about as good a used spec as you're going to find for flatbedding.
All right, okay. And you said that was Maverick? Okay.
Yeah, the ex-Maverick trucks. They have a lot of them at Doggett Freightliner in Little Rock.
Okay. You were talking about rear end ratios. Which ones did you suggest again?
Well, if you were doing a DD15, you're going to be wanting to look for 216 on the used market. That's about as best as you're going to find. 13s, they like they're all right with a 228. They'll spin a little bit faster, and they're okay with it. I've had quite a few of them put together, but that'd be my two combinations. And what kind of speeds do you generally run?
I like to do like 59 miles an hour, but I do get up.
Yeah, either one's going to work for you, the 228. If you were somebody that needed to run faster at times, I'd lean quicker towards the 216, but it's not a big difference between the two of them. But they have quite a few of them there. That's where I would look. Is if I'm looking for a used flatbed truck, ex-Maverick trucks are pretty darn good specs.
Oh. Okay, and what model years would those be?
Most of them they got down there within 3 years old.
3 years old. Okay. Okay, and then other than that, I had an oil sample.
All right, let me go find the oil sample. There we go. All right, C15. What year is this thing?
This is 2001.
Okay, an 01. We have one.
Well, I'm sorry, on the sample it'll be a 2003. It's in a 2003 truck.
Okay, that's fine. Little over 1 million miles on the engine, 33,000 on this oil. Oh, yep. Wait. Did somebody open up this engine?
Yes.
Boy, man, am I glad.
2 times since the last sample.
Was the oil changed after this sample?
Yes.
Okay, good, because the silicon level is at 74.
Yes.
Yeah, that's horrible. And we actually started to get some wear metals. So it's more that there's dirt in there. So we need to, I would also sample.
Right.
Have you been sampling at 25,000? Look here.
Generally, yes.
I would sample at 15 this time. Let's make sure we got the dirt out of there. And I'm not even going to comment on anything else because everything's kind of screwed up by having a silicon number that high, and we can't tell anything going forward. You could have a breach, and we would never know it. So we got to get that oil out. On the Cat, we usually don't get a lot of leftover oil. So that, on an ISX, if you have silicon this bad, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 oil changes to get it back down to normal because the ISX just holds too much oil in places. But this one, we got to get that number back down. So sample at 15,000, and then we'll look at it.
Yeah, on that sample, I actually did do a bearing roll. If you can look at the last sample, you'll see why.
Yeah.
And then I did the top end set. Then I had a compressor go and the turbo gone, and the air was out.
So let me go back and ask you something. I know we're at 1 million plus, and you rolled bearings in, and you said I would see why, but I don't see why.
On the previous sample, if you look, I had high metals.
No, well, yeah, but hold on.
That was a recommendation from Pittsburgh Power then.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you something but here's the history I'm seeing. I'm going back to 2019, and if we look at lead in 2019, 0, 0, 1, and then 8. And that's the 8 is the sample you want me to look at. And the copper was 19, if we go back, 5, 5, and 15. I'm nowhere near thinking we need bearings. When we pulled them out, were they really worn?
I'm looking at the iron and chromium numbers on the.
Yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with bearings. Iron and chromium is almost always upper cylinder. Copper and lead are bearings. So we watch lead first. Lead is the outer layer of the bearing. So if we see copper and we had never really seen much lead, well, then that indicates the copper is probably coming from the oil cooler and it's not a problem at all. If we have a history of lead over and over and then copper starts to climb, now we've gone through that outer bearing coating and we're into the copper. But that's not what I'm seeing here, because your lead numbers are so low going all the way back to 2019. I bet those bearings looked like new.
No, they didn't.
They
actually weren't. Not horrible. The mechanic said they weren't really bad, but he said it was probably good that you changed.
Yeah, well, see, and I know it's Pittsburgh Power, but I'm going to push back on that. I think that's, we recommended you change them, and now I'm looking at them, and they probably didn't need changed, is what I bet happened. But you don't want to say that necessarily.
They weren't adamant about changing them. I did it more for peace of mind than anything. Just to get in there and make sure everything was okay.
Yeah. My guess is you could have left the bearings, and this engine would have failed for some reason other than bearings at some point.
Oh, okay. Do you think it was the base number that caused that issue? Or?
No. Base, the lowest your base has ever been is 2.69. Base technically is still working until we get to 0.
Right. I've heard you talk about that. So what is the tin in this sample about?
Here's what we have to remember. Here's your history of tin. 0, 0, 0, 1, 3. The engine's got 1 million miles plus on it. You are going to start getting some wear on engine parts, and at this point, wear metals will start to go up. But that is such a tiny amount that I wouldn't even worry about it.
Okay. But the lead is the number that I should be concerned with on this one.
Lead we watch closely because lead and copper are like almost 100% correlated. If you see lead first and copper, I can almost guarantee it's bearing wear. Now, the one thing that will screw you up once in a while, but it's pretty rare, it could be the bearings in the compressor, not the engine.
Right. See, when my compressor issue happened, it actually wasn't the compressor. I replaced the compressor, but it had been working really hard for a lot of miles because I had a restriction.
And that's when you can. That compressor is built very similar to your engine. And when you can get wear metal patterns that look like engine, and they can actually be compressor, especially if you're overworking it.
Right. Okay. So that tin could have easily come from that
Could have.
compressor.
But even if it didn't, even if I knew that tin was from the engine, I would expect it at this point.
So that high silicon number, with all those repairs that I did and the situation I had, that's not. I mean, I understand it's very high, but it doesn't look like it's done a lot of damage yet, right?
No, it hasn't. And that's why I asked, did you get the oil out? That's a good thing. Then let's verify early that we got the dirt out when we changed the oil.
Okay. 15,000 miles. I'll do the next one.
Yep.
That'll be great.
All right. We'll look forward to hearing back from you. Let's go to South Dakota. Jamie, welcome.
Good morning.
What's
I
on
want
your
to
mind?
go way back into the conversation that we're talking about, why people aren't willing to accept the answers to the questions we have, like supply and demand.
Yeah.
Why change fuel? You got to remember that I don't want to throw out the number, but the majority of truck drivers had a 1.5 to 2.2 grade average in high school, if they even passed. and they've got no education past that.
Hey, Jamie.
And we're dominated by.
As far as high school performance goes, those would have been good numbers for me. The difference the difference is I took responsibility for my own education after that point.
I don't think most truck drivers do. I think they got a truck and they said go drive the truck, and they got in the truck and they could drive the truck, and that's all they needed to do.
Yeah,
the biggest thing of it is that we are dominated by a lot of people who are operators that have one truck. They can figure out how to get that one truck to do good enough, and that's it. And their one truck does good enough, and everybody that tells them that they could do better doesn't understand their truck in their mind.
No, you're right. That is a good explanation of what's going on. But I'll go a little further. We can't just lay this on truck drivers. It's most of society these days. I think the average is adults in our country now read less than one book a year after they leave high school. And I know people who have never read a single book 2 decades after being in high school.
That's a problem too.
Yeah, it's just what we're dealing with, and it is bad in our industry, no doubt. And it's hard to, and that's why they're not stupid; they're ignorant. But at some point, I start calling them stupid because you're stupid that you continue to be ignorant. You don't need to be ignorant. It is very easy to educate yourself these days.
That's something I miss, Kevin. I used to read a lot. I got to get back to that.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you drive. I mean, I'm not going to give anybody any excuse if they drive and they're not reading. My God, I make it through 2 books a week most weeks, and, I don't have that drive time anymore to do it. I have to sit down and physically read a book. But I've said for years and years and years, I think it's the only reason I do what I do, and I've had the successes I've had is primarily because of the books I've read.
Yeah, my phone rings too much during the day to get too much of that done. But it's not an excuse. I got to read yet.
Anybody with my phone number knows don't bother calling it because I don't answer it. If you need to talk to me, send me a text and tell me what you need to talk about, and I'll figure out a time we can talk. I don't even keep my phone with me half the time anymore. Let's go to New Mexico. Mike, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate what you guys do. I just wanted to ask you a question about changing tire size. I have a 2013 Cascadia with a DD15 in it. It's got a 10-speed single overdrive. The overdrive gear is a .74, and I've got originally the truck had low pro 24.5s, and I put 22 tall tires on there so that it would keep the spec more or less the same, but I was getting concerned about availability of the 24.5s. Mm-hmm. So where I'm at now, I'm contemplating putting low pro 22.5s on the truck, and I'm thinking there are going to be some gains to be had there, and the only sacrifice will be around a couple of miles per hour at any given RPM.
What gear ratio did you have?
It's the overdrive gear is a .74, and I didn't tell you this. I've got 264 rear end gears, so my final drive gear is really 9th gear, and there are situations where I can use the overdrive gear, but it's very limiting. It's in very low power demand situations. Mm-hmm. I can use it, and I'm hoping as part of all of that, I'm going to gain just a little bit more usability on the overdrive gear. I know it's not going to be a lot, but a smaller tire is going to be a little bit more mechanical leverage, isn't it? Even though it's still going to be the same ratio.
It's effectively gearing you a little bit shorter. You'll be fine. And tires will be more available and give you more of a selection.
But what gains am I going to perceive? Am I going to realize any gains that I'm going to see and know it's there? You know what I mean?
There's a couple of things to look at in this regard, and me and Alec talk about this at length all the time, and we're talking about leveraging the benefits of kinetic energy. And you're doing this when you're running the type of gearing that you have. You're trying to actually achieve, what you're trying to achieve is you're trying to lower the engine RPM, which reduces the amount of drag present in the vehicle. So when you go up and over hills, dips in the road, the engine, the vehicle will kind of free roll more because you have less drag working against the kinetic energy. Are you going to notice anything by switching the tires? This could actually, it may feel like it went backwards to you. It may feel that way because you are going to be running slightly higher RPM at any given speed. So it's going to create a little more drag in the engine, which is easy for you to feel. You will gain a slight amount of efficiency and rolling resistance because you have shorter sidewalls. You have less sidewall flex and less energy lost that way. So for you to actually feel that's a little more difficult. It's hard to say. I don't know what the power curve of your engine looks like. If you're making enough horsepower, if you weren't making enough horsepower down low with the taller tires and you can stay in overdrive more often, you will see a fuel efficiency gain by being able to get into overdrive more often with the shorter tires if it brings your horsepower up a little bit.
Yeah, my final drive ratio is 1.95, and I don't have a downsped engine, and so not ideal. I can use that sometimes. I could probably use it a little more than I do, but I'm reluctant because I don't know where that line is, where I'm going to start really doing damage to probably not the engine, but the drive shaft, probably. And so I'm reluctant.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yep.
So I mean,
so with the shorter tires, you will get into overdrive a little bit more, and you'll get a feel for it as you're driving it. And if you can leverage that benefit with the overdrive, you're gonna see a gain in fuel mileage to some degree. It just depends how much you can leverage that benefit. If you run it exactly the same as you were before, everything equal, it's going to be kind of a wash, really, because what you're saving in rolling resistance on the lower profile tire, now you're adding back in up at the engine. So the whole idea of this would be to go to the low profile tire, enable overdrive a bigger percentage of the time in order to realize a fuel efficiency gain. If it's just a straight up swap and nothing changes, it's going to be a wash most likely.
Okay, I got you. That's a really good point, Joel. That's a good way to say it. And if I was just thinking, if I split the difference and I increase the engine RPM a little bit, but I slow down it in any given situation about a mile per hour, I don't think that would cramp my style too much when I'm in ninth gear. And I was hoping maybe with that and the lower rolling resistance, I might, see a couple of tenths or something on the fuel economy. But, I'll tell you another thing. It seems like the sweet spot on my engine might be a little bit higher RPM than where I'm generally trying to cruise. And, Freightliner says the most efficient place for that, for the DD15 is between 1350 and then, if you're climbing a hill, they want you up at 1450 to be most efficient. But I'm usually cruising around anywhere from 1230 to 1300, and so maybe getting the RPM sliding up a little bit might actually make it more efficient. I don't know.
Well, you may improve combustion efficiency and efficiency in the engine by running that slightly elevated RPM, and that is absolutely true. And this is one of the arguments I'm having internally with the guys at Volvo Powertrain right now. You will increase combustion efficiency by getting to that sweet spot they're always talking about. What the engineers have a very hard time wrapping their head around is kinetic energy, because there's no constant to kinetic energy. It's constantly moving. It's dynamic. It depends on weight, speed, terrain, air temperature. There's a whole lot of things that impact kinetic energy. So, yes, you will improve your combustion efficiency, but is that going to outweigh your kinetic energy losses? I can't say for sure. In my instance, because I'm very adept at leveraging kinetic energy, I can almost never make combustion efficiency outperform the kinetic energy gains I'm able to realize with a downsped powertrain. So that's
Joe,
really what you're balancing.
Could you clarify for me, just to make sure I'm understanding what you mean by kinetic energy? Are you basically talking about momentum, that stored up energy when we're rolling down the road?
That's exactly what kinetic energy is. Any vehicle that's in motion has kinetic energy by virtue of that motion. The faster you go and the more weight you have, the more kinetic energy you have, but drag increases exponentially as well.
Right.
So
Joel.
we always try
looking
to
find
manage
that balance
that
between
Joel,
yes,
we just solved
kinetic
this.
energy and combustion
energy
efficiency.
Just
and the wind, right? The drag from the speed you're going at.
Wait, we solved this. The guy earlier we were talking about is right.
Okay.
100 miles an hour at 80,000 pounds. Come on, think of the kinetic energy potential here.
You know what?
There's a ton of it for sure, but there's a lot of drag that increases exponentially too. But for sure.
I called you guys back when I was thinking about changing the rear end gears, and one of the points we discussed then is if I actually can wind up in ninth gear to get it up there, I can shift into overdrive, and I probably have a 120-mile-an-hour truck now with that 264 gear.
Sure.
And that
as long as you have enough horsepower for it too. But one of the things that everybody tends to get confused on, and this is important for guys to understand if they're contemplating making a switch to run in direct drive. When we say run in direct drive, just understand there is a trade-off there. Sure, you're slightly more mechanically efficient in the transmission, there's no doubt. But coming back a gear out of overdrive, now the RPM goes up in the engine. And generally, depending on the size of the step between the gears, you would be better off running lower RPM in overdrive for a lot of applications. Now, if you are under a high power constant application where you're pulling heavy weight all the time, now direct drive really starts to make some sense. But if you have varying freight, overdrive is a better solution, even though you are slightly more efficient in the transmission. And I know it confuses a hell of a lot of people, but I can bury a direct drive transmission every single time with overdrive if you know what you're doing with it, every single time. And direct drive is very limiting in a lot of situations. Now, if your engine combustion efficiency is way, way up in the clouds, okay, now you can start to make some argument for direct drive again. But for most of today's modern engines, I think you're going to see a shift away from direct drive into exactly what Volvo's doing and what Freightliner's starting to do, where we're going to see, some very aggressive downsped gearing with overdrive transmissions and deep reduction in the transmission in order to maintain startability.
Okay. Yeah, I did. I don't like seeing that engine spinning too high, but it might be better to come up a little bit. But in keeping with your earlier theme in the show, I might just slow down a little bit more, and I already drive pretty slow, and it might make it all work really well. Of course, I'll be one of those guys everybody's cussing at.
Yeah, you're going to
55 to 58
welcome to the club.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. That's a big help.
Maybe before you slow down, you should put a deer guard on the back of your trailer.
Yeah, that's a good point, because that's probably what's most likely to hit me is, not a deer guard, a truck guard on the back of my trailer, right?
Yeah, because everybody's going to run into the back of you when you slow down.
I think we should put proximity sensors on the back of the trailers and point a couple high-powered lasers right out the back, so when they get too close, it just flashes lasers at them.
I like that. It's a good idea. Let's take the final call of the day. Mike, you get the last word. I'm going to try to bring Henry back, see if he stopped beating on things again.
You always bring. I don't know what you're hearing. You always bring me in last, and I never read a book in high school either.
Well, me either. Me either. I was allergic to books in high school.
Yeah.
Actually,
and now,
actually, that's
I
not
thank
true.
God for
No,
ebooks and audiobooks, because now I can listen to books because I can't read.
I do have to take that back. I read a ton in high school. It was just a novel hidden behind my science book, so it looked like I was reading the science book.
Yeah. Hey, I finally give up the old 96 FLD.
Why?
And I splurged on it. I don't know. I figure maybe I'll finish out the next 5 or 6 years with a Mac.
Okay.
I bought this Mac. Thought maybe I'd see what these guys thought about it. It was actually the Mac on the 2022 calendar. And the guy might be listening on the radio that I bought it from. 300,000 miles to 2022. Got the Mac MP8HE turbo compounding, 455 horsepower and 1850 torque, 14 M-drive transmission.
So that would be the burnt amber color one out of Colorado.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
You know what it is.
That's a great truck.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been in the truck. I've driven it.
Oh, cool. Then you know what I'm buying. So I didn't.
Yes, I do.
So I didn't do bad. You've probably seen it advertised.
No, you didn't.
Okay, good.
And it's a very well maintained truck as well.
Oh yeah. Well, I've never met Shane personally, but I talked to him on the phone probably 100 times over the last 8 or 9 years. But him, Kevin, and Ted are really good friends. That's how I met him, through Ted.
Sure.
Anyway, so okay, well then you answered all my questions then. So I did good. All right.
Glad to help
Sounds
you.
good
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hey, Henry. Explain where you are and what is going on around you, because every time we talk about the noise, you're like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. It is so noisy. Everybody else has to scream unless I mute you.
I have no idea. I just moved to a quieter room. There's nothing going on, and there wasn't really nothing going on where I was. I'm just at the house.
Here's the problem. You're breathing. Just stop.
Oh, well, that'll work.
If you stop breathing, if you stop breathing, the noises are going to go away. That's for sure.
Yep. Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing going on. I have a different headset. Maybe it picks up stuff that I'm not aware of. But
all right, so we're
I just
almost
went to
move it.
We're almost done.
Move your microphone out of your nose.
Quite honestly, trying something different. Is that better?
What did you do now? My God, you sound like you're you just stuck your head in the toilet bowl, but you left your phone in the kitchen.
Well, I spun the microphone up away. And
it's a little too far away. Bring it back into the same room at least.
How about there?
That's.
How about there?
That's
sound
good.
You
there
sound
you go.
fine.
Okay, now exhale. Yeah.
Yeah. Stop breathing.
Yeah.
No, it's a new headset today. But how about now? Is that back to the way it was?
Yeah. Now you're good.
It's quiet now, yeah, and we can hear you just fine. But that's not the way it's been all day.
I have no idea.
It's strange.
It's just me and the wife at the house. There hadn't been nothing going on.
You live in a very noisy environment.
Going on.
There you go.
All right. Hey, is it a Blue Parrot headset?
No, it's a new one from Shocks.
Okay, somebody guessed it's a Blue Parrot. They must be noisy. I talked about this before, and I think it's happening. When AI first came out, and I was looking at some things we could possibly use AI for, and AI can actually mimic somebody's voice, so you can't tell the difference. And I got thinking, all of this high-end audio equipment I've been buying for years to try to improve our sound quality, all that might go away with AI. I don't know why you couldn't just use AI. And I actually bought something on Kickstarter. I don't have it yet. But it's like a little charging station for your phone. and you just drop your phone on it. It's the induction charging. And it's also a speaker phone as your phone's attached, so you can just leave it on the desk and use it like a speaker phone. It uses AI to cancel out everything except your voice.
Well, Kevin, if they keep going with AI, they could have a conversation with you without even being there. They could just know what you would have said.
I'm looking forward to that day. That would be a big plus for me. Kind of what I do all day. If I could just plug in my AI bot and go wing foil instead, that'd be kind of awesome. All right. Anybody have any?
It would increase your naked guarding activities.
That's right. Anybody have any final words of wisdom?
Oh, we don't need to be hammered
words
down.
And wisdom.
Yeah, I know that's a stretch from this group, but I thought maybe I'd give it a shot.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out on that other truck with that guy that was talking with the 264 of how he got that with an overdrive in that, because when that truck would have been built, that combination would have had a hard time getting through CAE.
Yeah, I'll bet. All right, so nobody had any words of wisdom. Is anybody doing anything exciting this weekend?
I'm working.
That's exciting. Can be.
There you go.
Yeah, sure
is.
I'll be doing yard work and patio work, so I don't know about exciting.
All right.
I'm going to finish the foundry.
There you go. All right. Yeah. We're going to wrap this up.
I hope you find it.
I think you guys have just kind of given up for the day. Nothing exciting, nothing intelligent. We should just call it a day.
What was the author of that book?
Annie Jacobson, I believe. Annie Jacobson.
Okay.
All right. Homework. We'll see you guys next week. We'll see everybody else on Monday. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Be profitable. Be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work.